Okay, all right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regularly scheduled board meeting. It's July 20th. I'm the superintendent, Dr. Doyle. We do have a few words to say before we begin because we do have a virtual component to it. Before I start, I just want to verify with Chris to make sure everything's working correctly. We're good? All right. Thank you very much. All right. So before we begin tonight, I want to emphasize that although many of us are participating and observing from various remote locations, all members of our committee are welcome to participate in this meeting. This is a in-person and virtual meeting because we do have a board member that is attending virtually. In accordance with Assembly Bill 2449, this meeting is being held in person and virtual. This is a regularly scheduled board meeting. The meeting agenda has been posted 72 hours in advance. All materials that will be referenced tonight are available on our website. Due to the fact that the meeting will be conducted in a virtual environment and in person, there will be a number of procedures in place that we will be following to ensure that everyone is safe. And that I may have to interrupt the board from time to time if our virtual board member is having difficulty hearing or participating. Public comments, anyone has the option to pull a poll card before the beginning of the meeting. If they wish to speak on in public comment, both in person or virtually. It's not too late to submit a whole card if anyone is interested. If you are interested in submitting a whole card virtually, you would have to email Christina Lapola at Vista USD to indicate your interest, but you will make sure that you are included in the virtual opportunity to the board. The last thing, meeting security. In the event that there's some type of an issue or inappropriate behavior on the Zoom environment, we will have to make adjustments, likely pause the meeting and reinstate it once we feel everything is safe and behavior is appropriate. With that, I think we are ready. President Alvarado, we're ready to hand it off to you.
Thank you. I call this meeting of the Vista Unified School District to order, school board meeting to order at 7:06. Please stand for the flag salute. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and take roll call. Trustee Kelly.
Here.
Trustee Morocco. Present. Trustee Vargas.
Here.
And Trustee Smithfield. Here. And I'm present. We're all present and accounted for. There were no actions taken in closed session. That's the next item of the agenda. Number 4, approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Morocco, seconded by Trustee Vargas. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0, approval of the agenda. Next item is this item 5, district announcements by the superintendent. 5A.
All right, thank you, President Alvarado. We just have one announcement this evening. As our board has adopted a new set of values, our new vision, and each of our 3 portraits, both our learner portrait, our adult portrait, and our systems portrait. Our team as an organization is constantly on the lookout for really good examples of how our staff demonstrate our values and also those elements that are identified in each of our portraits. And so tonight we would like to recognize a group of individuals who have worked impressively as a team to really emulate and demonstrate to our community how organizations can live that. So we would like to acknowledge a number of people. I'll call them forward. But before I do, Dr. Loesch, if you could come up with me. And we have a commendation that I'd like to make on behalf of the entire school district. I'd like to read it out, but before we do, we'll have Dr. Loesch come up with me. These individuals work in the maintenance department in our school district. Let me get my glasses, make sure I get everyone's name right. All right, and then I believe we don't have everyone here, but almost everyone, because a couple of them are getting up tomorrow at 4:30 in the morning. So we'll make sure they get a copy. We're gonna have them come forward. We're gonna have them come forward.
Okay.
So if we could have all of you come forward, I want to call their names out. So tonight, we have a whole bunch of people here. So Anthony, if you could come forward, we're going to read it for you. David's not here. He's with his wife. So we acknowledge him as well. Noel is not here, I believe, because he's getting out at 4:30 in the morning. Chris, if you could come forward. Hector? Yeah, I believe Robert would like to be efficient, but he's probably getting up at 4:30 as well tomorrow. So Robert's not here, but you all know Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
And then Brett Harris, not here, getting up at 4:30.
He's on duty, actually.
All right. And then William Spencer. Come on up here. The reason that we wanted to recognize all of you and your colleagues who aren't here is that we're working hard as a school district to implement our vision, our new set of values, and the portraits that we've identified, the learner portrait, the adult portrait, and the systems portrait. And we saw an excellent demonstration of that by your team just a few weeks ago. So I would like to take the time to read this to you on behalf of the entire school district. So, on behalf of the superintendent of schools and our entire school board, we would like to officially commend the maintenance department team for distinguished service to the Vista Unified School District set forth in this following citation. This commendation serves as a symbol of our deepest appreciation for unwavering dedication and commitment by the Vista Unified Maintenance Department to supporting the educational programs and activities for all students and staff. Specifically, on June 22nd, 2023, Anthony Arias, Jade Morgan, Noel Farias, did I get that right? Farias, Chris O'Neill Carson, Hector Reyes, Robert Johnson, Brett Harris, and William Spencer responded to an HVAC air conditioning malfunction at the VIC, the Vista Innovation Center. There was a 2-day professional development event on deep learning scheduled with over 100 teacher participants. Once notified of the malfunction, the team responded within 10 minutes. They collectively assessed the situation and developed a short-term solution and a long-term solution. The short-term solution was installed within 1 hour, and the long-term solution was installed the next morning. What was most impressive was the kind and empathetic attitude that the team brought to the situation. They were very concerned about the impact the malfunction would have on the success of the event and were proactive in their approach to finding appropriate solutions. This professional behavior exemplifies our board values of respect, collaboration, and kindness. This professional behavior also exemplifies the key elements of our adult portrait: compassionate champions, flexible, and innovative facilitators. On behalf of the Vista Unified School District, we would like to express our deepest appreciation to the maintenance team for their professionalism and commitment to our values and our adult portrait. As such, in our official capacity as superintendent school and school board members, we would like to officially commend Anthony Arias, Jade Morgan, Noel Farias, Chris O'Neill Carson, Hector Reyes, Robert Johnson, Brett Harris, and William Spencer for outstanding service to the students and staff of the Vista Unified School District in this 20th day of July, 2023. Congratulations. Oh, yeah, you want to get it just a bit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Good job. Thank you. And when Julie gets back, we'll make sure Julie will get a picture of you too. All right.
So,
Let's have 2 of us on this side and 2 of us on that side.
Oh, you look great. Julie's right there. We got it. Not gonna block me. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. We're just like your children. And look at me right over here. Julie, she's right there. It's perfect, Julie. All right. Very nice. Yeah, I got it.
I know, right?
That's so just one last quick comment, and then we'll just quickly go through the board members for maybe a second or two. But this is important for us to take the time to acknowledge this, because as an organization, kindness matters. It matters for everyone in our organization, and to be honest, it matters for our entire nation. And so when we see people practicing our values, we need to be, all of us need to recognize this, not just for these amazing gentlemen, but for everyone in our district. So I truly want to thank you for that. Cipriano?
I'll leave it to our board president, so take it away.
What would we do without you?
Backbone of this unified, and without you, nothing works. So, on behalf of the Board of Education, I want to give you my sincere gratitude for the effort you put forth this day, but also every day of the year. You guys are awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very much. Don't feel like you have to stay. You know, you gotta.
Like, I wish I could give you something else, like.
I know.
I know, I'm trying to go along.
Yeah, go home then. I'm gonna. I'll be back.
And thank you guys for waiting too.
Okay, I'll hand it back to the president.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 6, presentation by community members, public comments. Community members, any member of the audience who wishes to hold and speak to an agenda item or at the appropriate time speak to an item not on the agenda should complete a hold card and present it to the board secretary before item 2A or before the meeting begins. In an effort to gain as much public input as possible, individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less. A total of 20 minutes will be held for public comments under item 6A. And we only have one hold card. So the person who is has a card is Sue Martin. Would you please come up and address the board?
Good evening. My name is Sue Martin and I'm a Vista resident and a retired USD teacher. During a presentation given by Dr. Olmsted in the last month's school board meeting, Trustee Smithfield raised a question about the use of $400,000 in district funds to be spent for a team from Vista Unified to attend the MTSS training conference. The question centered on the large allocation of funds for this training, while Dr. Olmsted, and I quote, is an expert in MTSS and could do the training in Vista Unified without spending $400,000. After reviewing this evening's board agenda, I don't see any follow-up to Trustee Smithfield's question, and I'm interested in the outcome, and I am requesting an update on this issue when you have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. All right, the next item on the agenda is 7A, report from school-related organizations, as the Teachers Association.
Good evening, board, Dr. Doyle, cabinet, and community. My speech is pretty short today since we're in the middle of summer. But this evening, as you discuss the consolidation of schools in the timeline, VTA and CSEA, I spoke to them, are asking you to take into consideration how this process will affect the students and the staff of the sites that are closing or being relocated. Please be mindful of how we move forward to make this a smooth transition for our community and an equitable process for our students. And I was part of the facilities committee when we closed Crestview. I was a Crestview parent. And that still has left lasting marks on my kids, where nothing against the school that they moved to, but they never had that same community that they felt at Crestview. So be mindful of this for our families. And it permanently changed the community that I lived in at that time when Crestview changed to an adult school. So I want you to be mindful because this is a hard process. And then I also want to thank the board for being a leader to other surrounding districts and supporting our LGBTQIA students, staff, and families. We have all seen how board meetings and city council meetings in other cities have played out on the news. And it is wonderful to see Vista to stand to be an inclusive leader to the districts around us. And with that, I'm done tonight. Good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Avidan. So 7B, we don't have do we have a representative from CSEA tonight? No. Right. Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda is board member report outs, starting with Trustee Morocco.
This is basically what, it's summertime, so, you know, been not able to do school visits or doing a lot of stuff. There is a ballot, and can I talk about,
It should be a report out of what you, like, school related things.
yeah,
When,
well, it's not gonna be positive then, because I'm very disappointed about Frenchman.
Well, okay,
I just want to say that, and that's it.
right, trustee Vargas,
Look forward to being at the music band performance tomorrow at 7:30 AM. You're all invited.
trustee Smithfield.
Out to make it. The only thing I've done is work with these wonderful people over here in this little corner. Facilities and bond. And, you guys should see the buildings now from the last time you got to see them, just in that amount of time. It's incredible. Everything that's going up, I know they're gonna share it, so I don't want to take their thunder away.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's it. We've run into a few issues, but they're handling it. The city's working with us and,
Trustee Kelly,
So since our last meeting, the only, we've been working on internal, board business, and I've also been, active with the California School Boards Association, our San Diego chapter. I will now be the secretary for that executive board, and we've had, one meeting, with planning the agenda items ahead for the coming year.
thank you, trustee Kelly, and I have not done very much. Sometimes family has to take priority, and that's what's been taking priority for me the past month, so. That's it. I'm sure we'll have more to report out next month in August. All right, the next item on the agenda is 9A, presentation of the recommendations of the 2022-2023 Climate Action Committee.
Okay. Thank you, President Alvarado. We wanted to have a conversation about this and bring the board up to speed a number of weeks ago, but the agenda was quite heavy in June, so we wanted to postpone it until July. So before our two representatives provide the report, I do want to officially commend and thank all the members of the Climate Action Committee. Our Climate Action Committee has been together for actually many years. Obviously, it was interrupted by COVID, but this is really a group of very dedicated people, parents, students, teachers, and other representatives that are truly have in mind how we can do our part as a school district. So thank you so much. We have a couple of slides for you to go through.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Dr. Doyle, for Board President Alvarado, Vice President Kelly, and also a special thanks to all the trustees, but we do have to acknowledge that Trustee Vargas and Trustee Morocco are also part of the Climate Action Committee and have been part of these meetings. So they also would be able to weigh in and talk as committee members for this item. We have a couple of overview slides to present. I wanted to thank our PTA representative, Danielle Christensen, for joining us here this evening. She'll be presenting some of these findings as well for the recommendations. So this is all listed on our website. It's something that's just part of the committee charter, just our purpose. It is in order to provide feedback and recommendations to the board on these important issues. As we move to our next slide and we move through, we did have a focus for this particular year. What we've been trying to do with committees is to say, what are we narrowing our focus to talk about? And in looking at these focuses, it was really looking at the sustainability goals and plans for the upcoming years for the district. We held 3 extensive meetings. Our meetings are posted as if they are part of the Brown Act. It's not a requirement. We do that for transparency. We also conduct our meetings a little differently. They're less formal. They're all in workshop format. So that way we're able to interact differently. All of the materials are available online. That's something that we do for transparency for everybody and are posted accordingly. Here's a full listing of our membership. Many of the names you may recognize, not just trustees here in the room. Mr. Arias was with us, who's in grounds, who's looking at the over 450 acres that we have in the district and what can we do with those things. We have representatives from the city. We have representatives from various organizations that have joined us all throughout this year and taken part in each of those meetings. So this is your complete listing of the regular participating committee members. The materials reviewed with the committee We reviewed the pertinent policies that are already in place by the board and presented those. The committee members were asked to participate in areas outside of just the formal meetings and review plans of other school districts. I am on record now of saying I actually found something from LA Unified I was quite impressed with. They have a really impressive plan for climate action that was comprehensive that we reviewed. We also reviewed other school district city plans from various cities, and members provided feedback on various things like the Clean Energy Alliance initiatives. Presentations received this year: City of Vista, Climate Action Pathways, our transportation department, just to sort of demonstrate an overall overview. And we also rehashed something which is an internal report we get from an organization called NV5. They monitor our solar activity. They presented all of the financial data about our solar arrays, but also the positive impact in terms of the number of metric tons and carbon units removed from the atmosphere or didn't enter the atmosphere because of those items. After several conversations and meeting, a review of the various areas, the committee made a choice to focus in on 3 specific areas to make recommendations to this board. Area 1 was areas for immediate action. What the committee felt was we needed to take and continue to take progressive steps immediately in a way that's proactive. This didn't necessarily represent things that are already in the work. We have amazing things happening. Ms. Shackelford and I just met with a group from Oceanside who is looking at various school districts in the region and complimented Vista heavily on how progressive we are on many of our climate action steps and what we're doing compared to other districts who we will not name because that's not polite. But in terms of what we were doing, they were thrilled with it. But we still felt the need as a committee to identify an immediate action next step that we could take. Area 2 had to do with district planning and alignment. How might we formalize a plan long-term? And area 3 had to do with student engagement and curriculum. One thing that we commented on collectively as a committee over and over again is we have a wonderful group that met, but there was not a student among us. And the issues of climate action that we're discussing are the ones that they will inherit for the rest of their life. And we need their voice at the table. So we need a way to encourage students to be at that table and to be engaged in these topics in a more formalized way. So these are the 3 areas that the recommendations will be presented to you this evening. Would you like to take on recommendation 1 for immediate action?
Recommendation 1, immediate action. The district would like to take an immediate action, operational action, such as joining the Clean Energy Consortium and the Power Purchasing Group to lower the impact of greenhouse gas emissions by entering or renegotiating a clean energy purchasing agreement to maximize the use of renewable energy sources.
So essentially what this is saying is that there are various energy consortiums available in North County that if we choose to negotiate, we can negotiate without a theoretical increase or impact to our budget or increase to price, but negotiate the amount of energy that we're receiving that is generated from clean renewable resources, and therefore making a conscious decision that would actually lower our carbon footprint. So that was recommendation 1.
And 2 is the district plan and alignment. The district would develop an official climate action plan during the 23-24 school year that is based on an established plan structure such as the City of Vista Climate Action Plan strategies, and add strategies specific to the district about curriculum, student engagement, community engagement, and outreach, and other areas identified during the development of the plan.
So we did review several school district plans and various plans in the area. And the idea behind this recommendation is that a plan such as the City of Vistas, which closely aligns to that as the City of Oceanside, is based upon a county-wide plan that has some established metric goals in place. And that by basing our plan on those metric goals and those things, we would have an alignment on how we were contributing to regional efforts and have a definition of those metrics in place. And then discuss what additional metrics we would want to be tracking as part of that so we could create goals around those items. And then finally, we have recommendation 3.
As student engagement and curriculum, the district would retain a service with expertise to actively engage student interns on the topic of climate action, such as the climate action pathways for schools. And B, adopt a district-wide design challenge on the theme of climate action as an existing structure, such as the STEAM Fair or the senior exhibitions, to engage students during the next school year.
So this was a twofold approach that the committee was recommending. The first is to engage an outside organization that's an expert in developing student internships and involvement in actions of climate action. And those also align to many career pathways and career technical education courses and pathways. The second was to use existing structures that we already had. So that way we could immediately start taking steps in ways where we could engage students in a more formalized way around these climate action steps. So these were the three areas that the committee came to their consensus for recommendation that we wanted to be able to present to you. On behalf of the entire committee, thank you for the opportunity to be of service to the board and make these recommendations. And we thank you as our PTA rep for joining us this evening, and we thank the two trustees for coming to additional meetings so that way we could engage in this conversation. At this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Superintendent, for discussion and for other items.
Trustee Vargas, would you like to give any feedback on your experience, and then trustee Morocco after him?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for the presentation. And with the, these are some steps that we can take in our own backyard. Unlike the city of Vista, we're not mandated to do this, so there's no legal requirement from the state. But we're, if we choose to adopt these recommendations, we're making a critical conscious effort to try to reduce the carbon footprint from our school district perspective. And so with it, we have some recommendations. I'm pretty sure, there'll be more as we continue to engage in these topics. But with the, looking forward to the implementation moving forward.
Trustee Morocco?
Yeah, so I unfortunately had to miss the last meeting because I was out of the country, but I really have enjoyed my time on this climate action committee. It's a passion of mine. I wish it wasn't, but it has to be. So being on there, I think I really like the direction that Vista Unified is taking. I think we're way out in front of a lot of other districts, so that's a very good thing. Do you have some questions when we have time? So are we going to do questions?
We're gonna do feedback right
Okay.
now. Yeah, we'll do some feedback. Yeah, well, actually, we'll start with questions. Trustee Kelly, you have any questions for the presenters?
No, thank you.
Trustee Smithfield?
Just going back to what you said about you didn't have students, and the recommendation is for the student engagement. So is the plan to go and revisit with the students to get to this one? Like you're gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually the notion of engaging climate action pathways was to increase student involvement, not just on the committee, but in creating structures that sort of would cascade down for that at school sites through both career technical education, but also through internship opportunities in order to advance efforts around this. So it was multiple fold for student engagement.
So curriculum is stated on here. That's probably what I'm thinking about. So we will get student input on curriculum.
Yes, it would be to get the student input on specifically on the climate action pathways curriculum. They provide a framework, but that's part of the framework is they involve students in that.
Trustee Vargas?
No question.
Okay, so I do have some.
And I have one.
Yeah, did you want to ask yours first or do you want me to ask mine?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I understand that the city of Oceanside has joined the Clean Energy Alliance.
Correct.
Do we know if the city of Vista has done that?
It is my understanding the city of Vista has.
Okay, is there any way that we could piggyback off that and join them ourselves?
So the Clean Energy Consortium is that group
Okay.
collectively together,
Okay.
and that's why, and we missed you at the last meeting. We know you're passionate about this. The reason why they gave the example of the Clean Energy Consortium is this was a group that came together with multiple agencies, MTS, City of Oceanside, City of Vista, City of Escondido, and that they are working together on these sorts of agreements.
Okay, awesome. And that was.
So my question, I'm happy, I was part of the first committee
And it was very difficult to get students there, but we did manage to get a few there. Transportation is an issue, so a question that I might have, would you consider having the meetings at the comprehensive high schools and the high schools rotating there after school? That way we could have maybe some kids attend that way. It might, it might interest them if they're already there to attend, and maybe we could promote it that way. Because you're right, it's all about the kids and it's their planet. And so, yeah, would you consider that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions?
I kind of have an idea. I'm thinking, now my understanding about student involvement, I know we were talking about getting them more involved in our meetings. An idea just struck me, especially because I was thinking along the same lines as President Alvarado. Maybe if in the future, when we have future meetings, we try to have them on various school campuses, which might make it easier for certain students to attend if they have transportation restrictions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will certainly take that under advisement. We do that with other committees.
Yeah.
We viewed this very much as a kickoff year, and now we need to emulate things, for example, the career superhighway, where we do exactly that and move things around. So that is our intention.
Awesome.
Any additional feedback before we end this beautiful report? Beautiful because we're being proactive, and I want to commend my fellow trustees in this board for what we've done with buses, our solar. I love it. Any other feedback? Trustee Kelly?
No, I just thank you to the committee for the work. I appreciate this report.
One more quick comment. I issued a challenge. I hope nobody minds. I issued a challenge to the school board of Carlsbad to electrify all their buses like we're doing. So I hope nobody I hope I didn't speak out of turn by saying the Vista district, the school district challenges you.
No, we all share the air.
Yeah.
And we share the same.
I agree.
So that's good.
And
Thank
they
you.
accept, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
For one day. All right.
The next item on the agenda is 9B, California State Approved Budget Overview.
So as Amy gets ready to give it, we normally bring the board up to speed after 45 days of the budget. But if you remember the last time we met in June, there was still some question about what the budget would be. So now that the budget has been finalized and approved, I felt it appropriate for you to bring all of you up to speed on what was approved and how does it impact us in school districts. It's super minor, very, very quick report, but I thought important prior to the 45 days. So Amy, thank you for doing your homework on this. You've done quite a bit of research, attended many different Zoom meetings to go over where we are.
Just had our school services one this morning, which had some great information. Unfortunately, we had already published this one, so I can put something together in a Friday
But
letter.
she's been working very hard. She has great expertise in this area. So thank you, Amy. Take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Doyle. So last month when I was here, we talked about the May revise there, and there were two main areas in the proposed budget of uncertainty, one being the revenues. So what we talked about and where we're still at is in a holding pattern as far as tax collections. So taxes, the corporate and personal taxes not being due until October 15th so we're kind of sitting in limbo until then. The state's anticipating $42 billion of collections for the 22-23 years. So we don't know the fate of those revenues for a few more months. And the other area of uncertainty was the use of on-time funds to pay for ongoing costs. So the ongoing costs, main component of that is the COLA. And so fast forward to where we are, we do have a new state budget. And in that is about $6 billion of new expenditures. 4 billion alone of that is actually the COLA costs for LCFF and for the categoricals. And so a lot of the items you see in this presentation are either reductions or delays to help fund those increased costs based on where we are as far as revenue increases. And so what you see here very briefly is a 3-year rebenching of the state's general fund revenues. And these are not all revenues. These are just the revenues that impact our Prop 98, is our main source of funding. And so what you'll notice, and the state has to do, same as districts, they always have to show 3 years. However, they rebench the previous 2 years, whereas districts project the following 2 years. And so they rebench for tax collections and property tax collections. So you'll see 22-23, if you follow that light blue line in these new state or the Budget Act or our official budget, where we have dropped slightly down to $204 million, so about a drop of $2 billion. And then in 23-24, it's a drop of about $5 billion. And so there was a lot of negotiations between the governor and the legislature about what revenues to use in the budget. So drilling down one level down from the general fund revenues is Prop 98. This is the primary source for K-14 funding. And so what you'll see in 23-24 has also moved up and down between January, May, and the actual final budget. And so it was up, it was down. What you'll see year over year from 22-23 to 23-24 is an increase of only about $1 billion. And so when I talked about that deficit spending, they've got $6 billion of new expenditures that they've included in the budget, but Prop 98 is only increasing by $1 billion. So that's hopefully that explains some of the reductions and I'll call it delays of some of those programs that we'll talk about later. Overall, we are 38.5% of the general fund budget. We are still in test one. Test one is the most favorable because it's not sensitive to attendance. Move on to the next slide. Public School System Stabilization Account. This is a terrible acronym, the PSSA. It's hard to say that with a straight face. While our revenue, while our revenues are going down, the calculation for those deposits are based on what the capital gains portion of general fund revenues are. So there is a deposit that is made into the reserve. It does hit the maximum of 10% cap. And so once that 10% cap is hit, they don't do any more deposits. What they do is they shift those excess funds to infrastructure expenditures. So good and bad. Could always use more facility funding. As a result of where we are still with the local reserve cap has been triggered for 23-24. I won't go through all of the bullets on here, but most of these are going to have separate slides in the presentation. The largest expenditure, as I mentioned before, being the 8.22% COLA for the LCF and categoricals, that's $4 billion approximately. If you want to move to the next slide. With the 8.22% COLA, it recalculates our base grants and also our supplemental and concentration grants. So you'll see what those new grants are. Overall, on average, the USD does receive $13,707 per ADA. We are a supplemental and concentration district. Just as a refresher for concentration, we get 65% of the base grant on top of for any ADA that's above our UPP of 55%. So we are sitting a little close. We're at about 66.5%. So we are still right above the concentration grant amount. And so if we were to fall below that 65%, we would lose that concentration funding. For the district, it's about $15 million. So it could be a significant drop when we go below that 65%. And of that $15 million, we receive about 3.5% for those increased staffing to student ratios. That was a legislative change from 2 years ago. So overall, the LCFF cost about $79.8 billion of that $108 billion Prop 98 funds.
So Amy, on the third from the bottom board up the concentration grant.
Mhm.
And it says includes 15% to reduce staffing ratios at school sites.
Yes, so that was a legislative change about 2 years ago, and that's how these funds have helped us be able to do reduce the combo classes. So that those funds are to be used only at school sites to reduce the ratios of adults to students. And that's about 3.5 million.
And I have one more question.
Mhm.
Or, sorry,
That's good.
the 250 million to augment literacy coaches and reading specialists.
Yes. So this was a grant that was also in place for 22-23. It's for districts that are more than 97% or 98% UPP. We had one school that qualified, that was Foothill Oak. And so we received $670,000, and it's good for, I think, 3 years. That they could spend on, I think they're doing a resource teacher and a literacy specialist. And then, so for this year, they've added additional funding, and so I think they were going to reduce the 97%. I think I read 95, but I'll have to double check that. So we might, depending on our UPP, might have another school that qualifies.
Okay, and that money goes to them.
Just to that school, nobody else can spend it.
So you say they decided on a literacy specialist? Is this like somebody that's actually credentialed with a reading specialist credential or something? Or is it just somebody that they said, oh, she's my friend and I like her and she can teach reading and be the specialist? Sorry. I'm sorry.
I know sometimes when you get up after sitting there, a while, that was not one of the requirements for that position. But it is an elementary school teacher that was selected for that
So it
position.
says the specialist.
Yes. One more. So the LCMF equity multiplier did make it through to the final state budget. The criteria has changed from what was originally proposed by the governor in January. Originally, it was based off of a percent of only students that qualified for free meals. And so at the time, we didn't have any schools that qualified. Based on negotiations with the legislature, they have rewritten the criteria so that it is more attendance focused. And so based on preliminary data from 21-22, obviously they will, once 22-23 is finalized, we received just yesterday preliminary estimates. So based on 21-22 data, we now have 3 schools that qualify. It is Major Murray and Alta Vista and Vista Visions. The Vista Visions may or may not still be in it when they review the 22-23 data, because as you remember, in 21-22, we had enrollment over 400 students. And so now that most of those students have returned to the classroom and their enrollment is now less than 100, they were originally estimated to be about $300,000. So that dollar amount might drop, but overall between the 3 schools, we're anticipated to receive about $670,000 based off of 21-22 data. And again, the same grant those dollars can only be spent at those 3 schools, or any schools that qualify. They cannot be used at the district level. And so you can read the new criteria on the slide. So the big change, the happy news, cuts to one-time block grants. So this was the most significant change, and it impacts our general fund restricted side of the house. It does not necessarily impact our unrestricted house, because these funds do come to us as restricted. However, that very first grant, the Arts, Music, Instruction Materials Discretionary Block Grant, that is about $11.6 million. We did have the original spend plan to help pay down pension increases for the next 3 years, which helps the unrestricted budget. And then that remaining $4 million was going to be used for furniture replacement at all grade levels. And so fast forward, at one point, they were going to reduce it by 51%. As of this morning, the latest information is it's a reduction of only 5.6%, not 6%. So that $700,000 does drop to about a $650,000 reduction, which is fantastic news, because that'll put us at about $11 million. We are still required to have a board approved expenditure plan. So that is something that staff will be bringing forward And we'll be seeking board feedback as to, now that we've had those funds paused since January. Does the board still want to pursue that same plan? Do they want to modify it? Taking that feedback into revising the plan so that we have that board approved plan that is a requirement to spend those funds. So that is the $11 million. The other one is a learning recovery emergency block grant. Instead of 15%, it ended up being 14.4%. And it's about, I had a note, $4 million reduction instead of $4.2 million reduction. So originally they were looking at about a 32% increase. It ended up being 14.4%. So overall, between the two, we're looking at approximately $4.6 million reduction. So we had already incorporated the worst case scenario at budget adoption based on the county direction. So we will be adding funding back in. Well, technically, we would add funding back into 23-24 if there's additional expenditure plans, because they are multi-year. And so it's more about how are we going to spend these funds on the out years. So not necessarily a change to the 45-day budget unless the board wants to propose, as an example, with the arts and music instructional block grant, different expenditures.
So it would be a difference of $10 million. So $10 million more we have access to than we originally thought in June.
And so as an example, with the learning recovery in the blueprint, we had only included the 1 year because it was a 3-year plan. Next year, we'll develop the following 3 years. And so there was approximately $12 million in the blueprint. And now now we'll have about $23 million. So technically any changes could be in the 3-year, the new 3-year LCAP.
So it gives us a little bit more of a cushion over the next 3 years because of this money coming back to us. We anticipated them backing off on this. We just didn't know how much they would back off.
So next slide on the ELOP, maintaining that $4 billion. That was something that everyone was watching, if they were going to reduce that dollar amount, that those funds still remain the same. However, they did extend the timeline to spend those first 2 years. So we have until the end of this year. And then they just provided some clarification around child daycare facility licensing for those programs that are held off campus. Transitional TK, they very little changes to that. They did extend the TK 24 ECE units they extended it out to August 1st, 2025. They did delay the facility grant program to 24-25. You'll see that trend delay and cut. This was one of those that they are delaying with the intention of funding at a later date. They did leave the 1 to 10 language beginning in 25-26. The language used to say if funds were available. Now it says with the intent of the legislature to provide that additional funding. So that'll be something that we'll continue to watch. And the other thing that they did clarify is the early enrollment TK. And so in the language, if you are going to early enroll TK before the birth date, so it would be June 2nd to September 1st, you must maintain staff class sizes or staffing ratios of 1 to 10, and that classroom can't have more than 20 and does not earn revenue.
At all, or just for the ones that aren't there?
It doesn't earn revenue until they become eligible to be a TK. Proposition 28, not a lot of changes here. We were hoping that they would clarify the supplement versus supplant. They did not. And so that's something that we're still waiting on, but the formula is still about the same. We're anticipating to receive about $3 million. Timing wise, they're saying no earlier than the fall. We have begun our staffing, so that's just a cash flow management of employees starting now, and then we'll receive the cash per se in the fall for the program. And other programs, just briefly, this is where you'll see more of the delays and reductions into some of those programs that were originally funded last year. The funds hadn't been allocated. So what they're doing is they're reducing those allocations and pushing them, either they're cutting them or having the intent to fund at a later date. And so that's all part of trying to fund the $6 billion of increased expenditures when the revenues are only about $1 billion. You'll see in the state facilities that they're funding a $2 billion one-time investment from the general fund. And then there's still the bills out there of proposing a statewide school bond on the 24 ballots. Opioid overdose medications, they've allocated $3.5 million for all middle and high schools and adult schools that will be administered through the county office. It is also a requirement that 2 staff members at every site have completed the training. And then additionally, if there's additional funds at the county office level, they can distribute to elementary schools. And if that's the case, then the training standards also need to be met at those sites. Accountability reform, I've highlighted the 4 main ones that will impact us. Low performance. So starting in the 24-25 LCAP plan, Kelly's going to be very busy. We do have to include actions that address our student groups that are receiving the lowest performance levels on our dashboard. Additionally, unsuccessful actions, any actions that have proved unsuccessful over a 3-year period. We do have to report on why there is a lack of progress and how we're going to change those actions to improve those outcomes. Additionally, mid-year reporting, we do have to do a mid-year LCFF update to the board approximately by February 28th of each year. So the January or February board meeting. And then they are committing to have the dashboard available by October 15th, but not, there's a typo, beginning in 26-27 year.
Feedback on this. Let's start off with trustee Morocco.
On
For questions.
I don't really have any questions, or I'm just, it's all very interesting. It looks like it's not as bad as we thought it was gonna be.
It's definitely not as bad as we thought it would be, but we're still also in a holding pattern until the end of October. And then in 24-25, it'll be interesting because the 8.22% COLA, as an example, is ongoing, where this year is paid for one-time funds. How are they going to fund it in 24-25 when your revenues are only increasing approximately $2 billion? And so that's something that they'll need to address at the state level.
And I wanted to, you were talking about the plan where you need direction from the board.
Oh, the arts, music, instructional material discretionary block grant.
Yeah, is that something that we can do as a workshop, or is that something that would be done at a board meeting? You know?
We could do it in a workshop. Normally what we would do is come up with some ideas and then that would be like a starter for the
Yeah.
board to engage in giving us feedback on.
Yeah.
One thing about that is the board could choose to do nothing and just have it, use it for next year too. So it doesn't necessarily have to happen this year.
Yeah, so I just would think that anything with the budget, it's benefit. In my opinion, I don't know how my colleagues feel, but my opinion is that it really is very helpful to have a workshop. I'm just wondering if we could get the presentation and materials a little bit in advance, not for board presentations, but for the workshop, like 7 days out from the workshop. That would be very helpful, gives us plenty of time to go over these deep budget issues and that, yeah, but that's, thank you, Amy, you did a great job.
Trustee Kelly.
Thanks. No questions, Amy. Thank you for the good news. Appreciate it.
Trustee Smithfield. Trustee Vargas.
On the legislature negotiating that statewide school bond, we wouldn't know what the criteria is because they haven't finalized that language then, right?
There are 2 different proposals, one out of the Senate, one out of the Assembly, and I can put that in the Friday letter. There are 2 different ones. One is mirrored off of, I hate to say, the Prop 13 that failed because it said Prop 13. And the second one, I think it did not include the college, but I can put the numbers and the criteria in a Friday letter.
with the changes to the zero emission school bus funding. How does that affect us? Because all of our buses are not electrical yet.
There's more of a grant funding because we haven't applied, we've been able to apply for funding through the HBIP program, and then we did receive 3 buses that we, Tracy applied for a grant of the county's I forget the whole acronym, it was a local grant. And so this would be one that they would just delay or reduce the grant offering that they hadn't published yet.
Okay. So we haven't applied for anything
Correct.
new. All right, thank you so much.
I'm gonna ask
Sure.
statement of thought about Prop 28, because I've been complaining about how we're doing this. So does this change anything? So the fact that the trailer bill has not clarified supplement for the plant. And we kind of, I feel that we took the wording of this and mushed it to make it work for a plan for collaboration of the school sites, as opposed to, I feel that it meant to make their arts program bigger at the schools. So will that definition change where we were going with this money and how we were using it?
At this time, I'm not aware of any changes. I don't know.
Yeah,
If-
I'm not aware.
Well, you said it doesn't include.
It didn't clarification, so
Are they going to clarify it?
we don't know. Because a lot of districts
So
are
when people
asking,
Start reporting that, okay, my district isn't spending his money correctly the way it says. Will that force them to define that?
it's hard to tell. So some of the questions are if a district is already using donations, can that same program be funded now from Prop 28, or is that a supplanting? Is that considered supplanting? So that's like the type of clarification. The big question that most districts have is districts have used supplemental concentration funds like we have to provide instruments and additional hours for programs. Is it supplanting if we move that funding over to Prop 28? Because technically the state didn't give us funding specifically for music and program. They give you supplemental concentration for local control. And it's that local decision that chose to use music. Is that defined as supplanting, or because you got a generic bucket of supplemental concentration for increased services? Can that be moved around because it wasn't earmarked by the state for? So that's the questions that districts.
That are, but there may be more as the districts start to spend this money, is what I'm saying, and we already know we have people that are questioning how we're doing that. So I'm just wondering if that either helps either side, like,
It's a good question. That's something that we'll continue to monitor because there hasn't been clarity either way.
Right. On that note, I think we are done with this report. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, the next item on the agenda, and Julie, excuse me, Trustee Kelly, if you need a bathroom break, just please unmute yourself and let us know, okay?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Do any of you guys need a bathroom break? Good to go? Okay, we're gonna continue then. 9C, the USD website transition progress update.
All right, so we wanted to do a quick progress update because we actually did make the switch. And we've been working on this for almost an entire year. Many people have been part of it. It's been truly a group effort. And we'll probably be bringing back to you a number of different types of updates. This is a very brief update tonight, but we felt it appropriate for Mr. Cossey to walk you through some of the initial steps of our shift over to a brand new webpage, not just for our school district office, but for every school in the district. Going to go ahead.
Good evening, board, community members, Dr. Doyle and cabinet. So this is, like Dr. Doyle said, this is a very brief presentation on a very large project. So we started this, it seemed like a short amount of time, but we were right on time to deliver this and at the end of the school year, right before people left. And so the last week of June, we made the final transition over to our new product, our new host, which is the Final Site website. And Final Site provides a little bit more features that are a lot more streamlined as far as the templates. So you notice that all the sites look similar, so it's easier to navigate. So we kind of hit all those points of feedback that went into, we needed to change anyway. So we hit all those. The websites are way more responsive. The access on the mobile device is a lot smoother and cleaner than it was before. So I'm really happy with what we have at this point, but we still have some work to do. Before we left, we made sure that the top topics that parents look for on the website were all addressed. So you'll notice that same menu that's pictured on the presentation throughout each district website or district and school website. So those are the top things that parents look for. And when during the summer here, where people are gone, that information has been provided there. A little bit of before and after. So the district website on the left, the before, I don't know if you recall, there used to be a slideshow that would load and would take a while to load, but it didn't load when I took this image. It took a long time to load. And so with the newer website, it's faster, more responsive. Anybody in the community now or anybody watching online can go in and go to the website on a mobile device and see how quick it is. It's very vibrant, very rich as far as the video content and how it plays that automatically. There's no delay in it as we had before.
And I think you've made sure that each school site has that ability as well, not just the district.
Absolutely. And so we're going to highlight a school next. So this is Principal Carrie Perez did an excellent job. She led the front end of basically how everything looked, the look and feel of everything. She did a really good job. And so this is her before and after her school. And you notice it's actually the same video, but the older video just took a while. You had to click play on it, that type of thing, and then it would generate slowly. As now it just scrolls through and you're able to get more rich content out of it. So it's very nice representation of our district at this point. So we still have some work to do. As people return, you'll see if you go deeper into the website, there's some things that aren't quite working. There's still broken links and stuff like that for various departments at the school level. So at the libraries, school libraries, counseling, didn't mention up there, but the counseling pages aren't ready. So we do have some work to do. We're working with Final Site as we speak to try and get what they call a virtual webmaster service to provide training, ongoing training. And we're looking at certification to build our own internal capacity as well. So.
All right. Any feedback from the board?
Well, I like the way it looks. I was playing around with it and trying to find where it said Spanish, and it took me forever to find it. Did you guys see that on the very bottom right-hand corner, they can click on it and then a parent can have it changed from English to Spanish? But is there a way to put that on top?
I'll have to check.
Somewhere on top?
I'll have to check to see if we can move that around. That's actually a additional service that we paid for. Is actually supposed to be more languages than just Spanish.
Yeah,
And so that's something that we actually have an open ticket for.
that's awesome. I think that's great. It wasn't intuitive for me, maybe I was like, where is it? But okay, that's great. I love it. Thank you for all of the energy and effort that you and the team have put forth. And Principal Carrie Perez, yes, thank you so much. Any other feedback from y'all?
Thank you.
Trustee Kelly?
Yes, thank you. Dwayne, great job, and kudos to everybody who contributed to this. I haven't exhaustively looked at the new site, but two quick observations that I want to share with my fellow trustees and you are that on the homepage of the main VUSD site, it's clear if you're an employee or a student where to go. And I was wondering about the design and not including a parent pathway up at the top right corner of the website. And then similarly, for access and transparency, I was hoping to see something on the Board of Education landing page, like a PDF that would very clearly explain to members of the community how to engage at board meetings, how to find the board agendas. It's still kind of buried that you need to know to click and click and click and land on board docs. I think I shared a sample with Dr. Doyle a year or so ago that I'll resurrect, but another school district of up in Orange County has a great, just like, hey, do you have a question or do you need to know what's going on? And like, this is your pathway for getting answers from this website, or in general, like how to pull a hold card. So those are just my two observations and I guess requests.
All right, great feedback.
Are we good, fellow trustees?
I really like it. It's really popping and looks really good and a much more user friendly than the other one was. But I do still find the broken link. Do you have a date of completion that's sort of a target that when it's going to be completely transitioned?
So we're working to build that internal capacity right now. And so we're going to go through and basically audit every site and try and point those out to so there's every school, every department has a webmaster. And so we'll work with them to address those issues.
Yeah, but is there so aside from the
Prior to school
individual
starting.
school sites,
Yeah,
but
prior to the start, sure.
Yeah.
okay, oh, really? That
Yeah.
awesome. That would be
Part of
amazing.
the problem with the links that are broken is we need people to come back to work in order for us to fix
Yeah.
the people who know the links and have the actual links to do, so.
Yeah. That and the one last thing is a place on the front page for uniform complaint procedures. I don't know if I see that.
It should be on the bottom.
And it should be along the bottom, but if you can't find it, then that's point of feedback that we need to address.
We'll look for it.
Got it. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is item 9D, secondary student connection and belonging survey and initial summary of progress developing the learner portrait instructional playbook.
All right, so a number of years ago, we had a conversation, and Dr. Coleman was with us. This actually happened at the Leadership Academy, if you remember. We had our board meeting at the Leadership Academy, the workshop, and we talked about the performance framework. This is prior to the pandemic hitting. And since then, our team has actually been working in a lot of different areas. But one of the biggest areas is this idea of students self-reporting, in particular focusing at the secondary level, middle and high school. So we've been experimenting with teachers and principals at the middle and high school level with this idea of what elements of performance framework can we add that address a sense of belonging and connection. And so he's bringing forward to you a report tonight. There's quite a few slides here. His intent is not to go over all those slides, but we didn't want to leave a school out. So we'll jump through past a couple of them, but we wanted to make sure everyone was there. So again, we're not going to go through 100 slides, only a few. Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
All right, and I'll
You
just
want
do
to say
a quick introduction. You guys all may know Dr. Coleman, may or may not read into know Dr. Coleman. So Dr. Coleman's been working with Vista Unified for quite a few years, really since the inception of Vista's journey with MTSS about 6 years ago. And so he's been working with a group of teachers this year and administrators to work towards operationalizing our learner portrait through our secondary school performance framework. So his work with groups of teachers to look at our portraits, design activities around them, and then really creating a survey around connection, belonging, and engagement. And that's what he'll present to you tonight. And then I'll sit down for a minute, let him present, and then I can answer next steps for what we'll be doing this next year.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, President.
Thank you. Welcome back, sir. I remember our presentation at Temple Heights, and thank you for being patient.
Oh, no worries. And I did wear my Vista outfit.
You got the memo.
Color scheme. And before I get going, my kids would tell you, if they were sitting here, hearing me introduce the doctor, when they're like, Dad, you're not the kind of doctor that helps people. Please call me that. We're gonna dive right in and first off, I want to commend you on the learner portrait. This is work that I believe is critical. I've got a personal connection to it. I've got a 20-year-old daughter who's a high school dropout and really struggling. And I'm telling you right now, if this had been the focus of her experience at South Eugene High School. I did say it out loud. And if her parents had focused on really this and playing to her strengths, she would not be a high school dropout. And that's my kid, and this is my personal story. So I've got a level of commitment to the kind of work you're doing. And so, we're doing this type of work in other parts of the state, in other parts of the country. And so we'll get into some of the key elements here. Where I'd love for us to start, go ahead and this one. I know you guys are working with Michael Folan, a huge Michael Folan fan, and what he does in terms of helping us think systematically in ways that allow us to take care of all kids, but specifically our kids for some opportunity. And one of the things, and this is one of his quotes, by integrating well-being and academics, we establish learning as something that prepares all students for the ever complex world we live in. When I think of well-being, I think of being kind, confident, and connected. When I think of academics, I think of being curious, capable, and knowledgeable. When I think of those together, which is your learner portrait, they're equally important. When we talk about future ready, and go ahead to the next slide. You can talk about future ready. One thing, and I'm confident I probably shared this with you, but I come to you with the expertise of having run a large comprehensive high school as a high school principal, 2,700 kids, as a large middle school principal, 1,200 kids. All that was in the Beaverton School District in Beaverton, Oregon. I've been in the role I'm now at Inflection, CEO of Inflection, for 9 years. Inflection's been around for 20 years. Our expertise is in college and career readiness. The CCI that's on the dashboard, we contributed that. CDE basically commissioned us as an organization to actually help them add to, and I would say more than just the idea of scores on an AP or an IB exam, as well as scores on SBAC. Our contribution to that effort and our research showed them that CTE pathways need to be part of it. I'm sharing this, and I'm sharing this slide to show you the framework that we use. And it's a research evidence-based framework about what it means to be ready for college, ready for a career, and most importantly, ready for life. You need a holistic vision. You need a holistic learner portrait. So you see that the Think, Know, Act, Go is this concept of it's the framework that we use. And you can see that under Think, that's where elements of being capable and curious live. Know is classic content knowledge and skills, which it gets at the knowledgeable part of your portrait. And then confident, kind, connected, and confident, you can see where they fit in the act and the go. The reason I have IB and AVID and AP up there in the College Board, we've done 11 studies for the International Baccalaureate. I know you've got IB schools. The most recent one that we did was around productive struggle. The concept of productive struggle, the International Baccalaureate is looking to bake into their curricular frameworks. They move very slowly, so does the College Board, but it's coming. The idea of productive struggle, when you think about your learner portrait, it is about curiosity. It is about developing competence. It is about becoming capable. This idea with IB is that kids have to experience in high school. They have to experience this idea of going underwater and developing what we call academic buoyancy. That has to happen when they're in the K-12 environment, because they've got people around them that are caring and can support them and help them figure out how to come back up. You've done that in your learner portrait. College Board, AP, we run the AP course audit. So you got high schools with AP courses. You can't put AP on a transcript unless our organization approves it. I talked to Trevor Packer, the VP for AP, oversees AP for the College Board, about 3 weeks ago. We've built for them a set of technology and tools that they're going to be able to deliver asynchronous and synchronous professional learning, because they, as an organization, the AP program is going to incorporate project-based learning as a core instructional framework for AP. That's a huge shift. They move at a glacier's pace, but it's coming. And I can tell you it's coming, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but because they've paid us to build the technology to deliver on it, the professional learning. The teachers are going to need AP teachers. I share this, and I throw Avid there because we do research with the Avid Center also. I share this just to give you a sense of where things are going in this concept of college and career readiness, and we think of it as college, career, and life, because what we know and what the research tells us, what you need for college is no different than what you need for career. It's no different than what you need for life. All right. Couple of things, and again, I'm gonna preface this with my daughter. She was very connected, felt a sense of belonging, and was fully engaged up until about 9th grade. Just specific disability in math. And as a parent looking back, as a parent who knew better, I watched, I mean, I'll think back to now, I watched and didn't take the kind of action that we needed to ensure that sense of belonging, connection, and engagement would be there, because she was a learner prior to high school. But there was a point in high school, and as she transitioned to high school, where that level of engagement started to wane. It started to wane because she felt less connected. She felt less connected because she didn't feel like she belonged. Go to the next slide. What we're going to look at is data from your sites with 3 administrations of surveys that have been developed and you guys are using. Belonging, you can see, is a sense of feeling accepted for who you are. Connected is this idea of feeling cared for. And engagement is this idea of leaning into the learning. Students see it as their own. They see themselves in the curriculum, et cetera. Often these 3 constructs are folded together in classic climate surveys and climate work that's done. We intentionally pull them apart. So they're totally interrelated, but you'll see in the survey questions, go to the next slide. In the survey questions, you can see that they're related, but they're distinct. Belonging, and I'm not going to read through all these, but just to give you a sense of how the questions are asked of students. I feel accepted at the school for who I am. A question like that is a yes, no. You'll see under belonging, I feel accepted for who I am in. It's the same question, but at the secondary level, because you have classrooms that you go to, and you might go to 5, 6, 7 different classrooms in a day, it's important to get a sense of what kids are feeling at the classroom level. So the first one is at the school, across the school. The second way that that's asked, I feel accepted for who I am in all my classes, more than half my classes, less than half of my classes, none of my classes. That's how that's at. Those types of questions with the ... are asked. You can see that the belonging are really focused on kids feeling accepted for who they are. The connection is around care, and then the engagement is around the leaning in to learning. Go ahead next. And go to slide 10. Let me use, I was hoping Eric would be here, but I'm going to use Vita as the example, just because I love going back and forth. When you look at Vita and when you look at these surveys, and I want to talk about these not in the context of not just Vista, but what and how this looks in relationship to other schools in other states, in other districts that are using these same surveys. Belonging, you see that at Vita, you see that all 3 administrations above 70%. That's what you want. That's why it's showing up in the green. The low, below 5%. Is what you're looking for. That's what you want in the green. These types of surveys, the way I think about them, it's the back of the hand to the forehead. And it's like, okay, you might have a fever here, right? You have the capacity to drill down to the student level. So when it says 4% with belonging, you could actually identify who those kids are. They're identifying low for belonging, and you could look to intervene. That is the direction, that is the intent. So that when kids are not feeling like they are accepted for who they are, there's a way for them to essentially elevate that and for the schools to be able to take action. When you look at engagement, again, all in the greens. And I'm going to tell you, and you see this across pretty much all of your schools. In belonging and engagement, you guys are, and I'm going to say it in this way, you're outperforming most of the other schools that we're looking at. And across different school states, and when I say amongst, there's probably 30 to 35 middle and high schools that we've got in districts that we've got in this database. So you look really good, and then you look at, okay, well, let's look at connection, because connection doesn't look so good. Well, it does. With the 30 to 35, there's one school, the Academy of Arts and Academics, that's in Springfield, Oregon, that looks really good. They're a small, they're similar actually to Vita in terms of a focus. The reason they look good is because coming out of the pandemic, they could feel it in their student body, and they stopped everything and took about a week to 2 weeks where they stopped the normal flow of school and addressed this idea of connection. I'm not suggesting that your schools do that. One of the things that we believe we have going with connection across not just your schools, but all schools, is that kids at this age struggle to know that you getting in my grill, you getting in my business is actually a form of caring. And so one of the things that we would certainly encourage all of you and your sites to be really focused on is helping kids understand what care looks like. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, trust me, I've got 4 kids. I'm still in their grill. The way this is, and we call this, I think this is a school performance framework. And I would encourage you all not to get fixated on the numbers, but to get fixated on the type of actions that your schools should be taking. The big idea for this particular survey next year is it's going to be done at the 6-week, the 18-week, and the 30-week mark in the year. If I'm in I'll go with connection, you can see the emphasized connection. Looking at that 10%, we want to cut that in half in the next 12 weeks. To do that, you can see under intensive and individual, what are some action items, little things and key moves that staff, teachers can, and all staff can do to start to look to drive down the percentage of kids that are in the low. The big idea in terms of performance is that we're not going to wait till the end of the year to check on the climate collectively, but individually. It's going to be at key points in the year. And in the case of this, we look at the 6-week mark as critical, especially for incoming middle school kids, 6th graders, incoming 9th graders. It's critical to catch those kids at the 6-week mark that aren't feeling a sense of belonging. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It will be tough. It'd be tempting to kind of look at it and say, oh, what about this? And what about that? Don't fixate on the numbers. Fixate on the action that schools are taking. I'm an old basketball coach. I like to think of it this way. You're down 12 at halftime. You can't make adjustments unless you know why you were down 12. So the big idea in the second half, if you lose by 24, we got trouble because you're not making adjustments. You're not paying attention to the things that matter. And our intent, and I say our intent, your intent, you can tell I'm a little bit passionate about this kind of work from an organizational perspective. Your intent should be to intervene in the moment that it matters. So the kids that start to not feel like they belong, don't move to not feeling connected, don't move to disengagement, and then ultimately you're out. So, all right, let's go ahead and.
The interesting thing is almost all the schools are very similar.
Very similar.
If you look at it.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So, and then we're being challenged. But when we sat and we had our workshop, and we talked about this, you may walk us through this. How often do the kids take the survey?
3 times a year. They'll take it 3 times a year. Yep.
Okay, for some reason I thought they took it like almost weekly.
No.
Okay.
No, and part of it is you're part of the 12 weeks is you want to be able to see change. Now, part of the hard part and why I would say you're looking at what actions are being taken, you're going to have kids that it's going to take much longer than 12 weeks of sustained, helping them develop a sense of being cared for before they're going to actually feel it. Does that make sense? The other piece, as I mentioned the other piece that's important, you will have kids that have something happen in the night before to where they don't feel cared for in any form or fashion, which is why it's important when you see it and let's say you see a kid come up in the low, the assumption is that kid doesn't necessarily feel that way. It's that indicator that says somebody needs to check in. Yes.
That's kind of what I was thinking in this presentation is, this is all well and good, but if you're a child living out of a car, or, you don't know where your next meal is gonna come, or you are not safe in your own home, this is all well and great, but like, that those kids have additional stuff
They do.
on them to help them feel connected. So,
And
how do we address that?
that is the ultimate challenge. And there are a lot of kids that we don't know. Things will turn in a heartbeat. And the whole idea with this, it's a little bit like a universal screener or an early warning indicator. With kids that are in the low specifically, it is about meeting them where they're at, which means you don't look at it and just apply it. Oh, you go over here. It means you actually engage. Empathy interviews is a great strategy and a tool to where you actually engage with kids and get a sense of what that is and how you could help, how the system can help.
Trustee Kelly?
Are you checking for my feedback or to see if I have questions?
Questions, and I'm trying to like go in order, so I has her time to talk.
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay, trustee Vargas.
So interesting, connection seems like, we see the red consistently throughout the district. So it sounds like, as a district, that's something we need to lean into. Working with other districts is like something you're seeing across. Or is it just
Seeing it across.
Okay.
Seeing it across. I do think it's a function of the age. But I also think it's a function of us as a system not being explicit enough with kids around, when I'm encouraging you or getting you, I always say getting your grill because that's what my son is like, get out my grill, dad. When I'm getting in my son's business, he doesn't feel like I'm caring for him. I joke about it, I'm a preacher's kid. My dad I used to get swatted on the backside. I'm only doing this because I love you. I'm not advocating corporal punishment, but he'd swat me. But that's the piece that we have to be much more explicit with in terms of the care. And so that's the big idea there, but that has been consistent. The only place that we saw a really significant difference was the Arts Academy. And they felt it. They've got a really unique instructional design, very project-based, very student-oriented, very much students having to work together. Right out of the pandemic, they could see, oh God, our kids haven't been together for a year and a half. And the kids didn't know how to be together. And so they literally in October stopped the normal course of instruction and did a whole school intervention. There's a small school, about 300 or 400. And it had a huge effect.
My question is for Dr. Doyle or Dr. Olmsted. What is our safety net when our kids are in the low? Who is responsible for contacting the kid? The social worker, the counselor, the vice principal, the principal, who?
All of the above.
Did it happen this year, like at our sites? Because, I could be wrong because maybe the doctor mentioned that, if a kid has a bad day, we don't know, like one bad turn of events could totally change the way they feel the day they take the survey. But I'm thinking that if we were monitoring on them, then maybe those low numbers should have been reduced into a smaller percentage.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily see that.
You don't, and this is the caution I would put out there. You aren't necessarily going to see it right away.
Okay.
It can take time, and this is a relatively new way of measuring the line connection engagement. And again, I point out the traditional ways that we've done the California Healthy Kids Survey is one prime example. It's kind of this one point in time, usually at the end of the year.
Right.
I typically call that, I think about that as postmortem. Kids have already gone through the progression, they're checking out, it's too late. We're trying to figure out how do we do this in real time. And so, I can give you one example, just what schools I was working directly with. They in Vista, Rancho Minerva, Christina and her team over there, they had identified about 60 kids. And it was a game plan that they went out and did a real quick empathy interview and identified which kids were, which kids weren't, and then if were really feeling low, which kids had a bad day, et cetera, and then move with the plan of action. One of the things that happens though, and one of the intent with this, and if you go back to slide 10 real quick. The focus here is on individual, and this idea of intensive individual is those 10 kids known by the staff, you look to intervene. And when I say you look to intervene, not an individual person, but every teacher's got access to that information. So they'll know which kids are in the low. And so when you see things like be intentional, who are you going to get to know deeper? That's really for an individual teacher. Which of these kids you know really well already? Which do you not? And if you don't know them really well, go deeper. When I say know them, obviously they know them by their name and their face, but oftentimes kids that are in that space, they aren't known by their story. So go deeper with the story. That's an individual action. So when Christine said, or Dr. Olmsted says, it says that, you know, everybody, that's the way this is kind of designed, is so that everybody has a sense that we talk about moving from me to we. It's the we's responsibility. That said, this is new. And our official kind of rollout in terms of the school performance framework is for this next year. So this is a little bit of a taste, and to all of your point, you know, what's going to happen between week 6 and week 18. That's a question that I would be encouraging you all to be asking, you know, essentially principals, and be asking for a report as you get into kind of the middle of this, probably the late fall.
And I can tell you already that based on the last survey administration, Sandra, Narciso, and I have already sat down to look at the results and already put a plan in place. And how do we work with the results as soon as they come out in real time this next year, and how do we work with our sites? And so this will be a big emphasis with our secondary schools, with middle school principals and high school principals, as we meet with them on a regular basis to ask them, you know, what have you done with the results of your surveys? How have you followed up with your teachers, and what results are we seeing? And then this next part of the presentation that's going to be showing you is the performance framework that's been worked on this year, that gives more of those ideas of when we see kids not responding, what are some of those interventions we can do? And that's what they'll be trained in this fall. And the big focus of the August 10th Professional Development Day for teachers is how do we create those environments of connection, belonging, and engagement? And that'll be our focus to start the school year.
So Trustee Kelly has her hand up. Trustee Kelly?
Thank you. I realized I did have a question that I had. If we could go back to one of the school slides, any particular one. Dr. Coleman, I would love it if you could walk us through what are the definitions of low, moderate, high, and what those numbers represent. Like, do they all add up to 100? Is it a statistical sample? You know, if I missed that earlier, I apologize, but I thought I understood it. And then I heard a comment that made me think maybe I had not grasped it clearly.
Yeah, what you see up there in using Vita, the sample size in the spring was 628 kids took the survey. 74%, 22%, 4%, it's 100%. So 100% of the 628 that took it, those are the percentage in the high, moderate, and low. I don't have it in front of me. You probably wouldn't want me to talk about it anyways, but basically how the kids respond on some of them are 6 questions, 5 questions, or 4 questions, how they respond on those. They respond to them, for example, on the I feel accepted for who I am in all of my classes, more than half my classes, less than half my classes, none of my classes. You know, if they're above the more than half my classes, that's a high. If it's a low, would be less than half and below. And so it's a matter of just folding those the different scores across all 5 questions together. The reason I mentioned it's a back of the hand, and you might be familiar with Panorama and some of the other surveys that are out there, even the Healthy Kids survey, they ask more questions. And so you can get more data, you can draw more conclusions from a longer survey, but our schools can't administer those regularly enough. And so we're saying, look, we just want to get the hand to the back of the hand to the forehead to get a sense. So where our kids are, and then we'll go in and look to intervene. When you look at it at the group level, it's actually very valid and very reliable statistically, because you've got 600 kids that are answering these same questions. I don't know if that helps.
Well, the Healthy Kids Survey is also one that's just a sample.
Yeah.
It's not every kid.
Right.
Every
Yeah, no,
kid.
that helps. And then follow-up question, where we see the green shaded boxes outlining on this slide, you know, the spring and fall, high belonging, high connection, what do those boxes indicate?
Yeah, those indicate that my kids would double down on the fact that I shouldn't be called Dr. Coleman. Before we added the spring 2023, that's just used to kind of help highlight where the positive are. And when you see like in connection, that green from spring to fall, a 10-point game was highlighted. And those need to come off. So,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I just noticed some.
there are folks that would say, yeah, as doctors from the University of Oregon, and they give me grief over it, but I'm a proud duck.
Okay. Just to clarify.
Yeah.
The kids take this at school. Okay. The results are spit out. So I'm a teacher, my kids take it, and the results come up, so it's, okay, there's 3 that don't feel connected. And whatever, the 3 are,
Yeah.
they feel engaged. Do I, as the teacher, know exactly who's feeling that way?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a name. And then, kind of with Julie's questions, but her was high, medium, and low. As a teacher, are we telling our teachers, these kids don't feel connected? And this is why they don't feel connected, because that's their own personal story. But when your child doesn't feel connected, here's how it is, and here's are the things that we can do to help them make. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
I want it more than just, here's the result.
This leads to,
What are we
yes,
doing with it?
you're teeing it up. You're teeing it up. And this also gets at why this has just been, we're rolling it out, we're getting there, but we've been developing a playbook. And we call it an instructional playbook. And this will be true for belonging, connection, engagement, but it's also true for your learner portrait. So being kind, confident, curious, and connected are the 4 out of the 6. They're going to be incorporated in the playbook. The idea of the playbook, and we've gotten feedback from teachers in Vista. We've also cross-checked the literature on belonging, connection, engagement, as well as being kind and being confident, et cetera, about those practices. And what I like to say, those little things and key moves that teachers make to actually improve a kid's sense of feeling cared for. What we're not talking is about something you need to go out and get trained on. It's something that your colleagues down the hallway had identified, or you identified as what it takes to actually help a kid feel connected.
Yeah, like you mentioned before that, sometimes they don't understand when you get up on them, that's your way of
Exactly.
really caring about them.
Exactly.
Yeah. that's what I'm
And
talking
the
about.
little thing or the key move there is be explicit. It's almost, I'm getting in your grill because I actually care about you. I believe in you.
But I think sometimes teachers get hung up because they want that little program to say, oh, it's connectivity and I need. So I think it's important for those
Absolutely.
kind of examples and stuff when.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the learner portrait. And it's a similar process in terms of, and actually, Matt, let's just go to the next slide, I think. So in the where do you want me to go? Back.
19.
There we go.
All right.
For kind is being positive, patient, appreciative, reliable, and responsible. What you see on the visual on the left, those are the little things and key moves that your staff, and again, I can't stress this enough, we cross-referenced it. Not because we didn't believe in your staff, but we wanted to see what the literature said out there around kindness. It totally mapped on. This came from your teachers. We asked your teachers via survey to identify the little things and the key moves that they make to develop kind kids. And the definition of kind being positive, patient, appreciative, reliable, and responsible are there. So those things on the left come from the playbook that was developed by your teachers and by your teachers' input. And so when you think about it, and I'll look at, and this is the actual survey questions for kind, and we only ran this at one school this spring because we needed to do some work on making sure the measures hold up. But you see in the past week was the way this question was asked. My teachers have demonstrated kindness, patience, and respect. And you can see the 5 options, all my classes, more than half my class, less than half my classes, et cetera. Small wins and successes have been recognized in. I've had opportunities to work with my classmates in small groups in. Unkind words or actions have been addressed directly in. Those were little things and key moves that your teachers identified. It's backed by the literature. They're critical for developing kids that are positive, patient, appreciative, et cetera. So we go ahead and pick the next slide. The school's out there because this was the school that we did the study at. We did this study and I'm just gonna focus in on kind. 57% of the kids said more than half my classes and all my classes, they felt like developing kindness was part of their experience. 23% said half their classes, 20% said less than half, none of my classes. The two indicators that were most prevalent across all kids were recognizing small wins and successes and looking and listening for unkind words and addressing them directly and consistently. Yeah. Don't be dissing secondary, folks. No, but you're right. Systematically, this is not necessarily a point of emphasis. So if I'm principal of X school and this is what I'm seeing, that's not something you go out and get training on. That's something you say, you know what? This is a point of emphasis for us over the next 12 weeks. We're going to look to move the dial on kindness. This is what we've heard from our kids. This is what we're going to lean into. And it's not something that requires you, these two in particular, to rework your curriculum and do this or do that. It just needs to be front of mind. Does that make sense? So playbook with belonging, connection, engagement, and then this idea of kind, curious, confident, and connected. And you can see it. And again, I can't say it enough. We had a small group that worked on it initially, pushed out, got feedback from, I want to say a couple hundred teachers. I could get the number for you if you want to know the number. And actually go back one minute. Those are what you would look for. If you're to walk through a classroom, what would you look for? And from that, you can develop look for tools for instructional rounds, instructional walks. And then the next one was the little things and key moves. And that's what we're looking to employ these surveys so that you're actually getting a sense of what your students' experience is. I put this up here. You kind of hit on it. Secondary flaws, secondary school design. They were designed for independent contractors to work independently. And it doesn't work for all kids. In fact, it doesn't work for most kids. And part of the challenge systematically, not just here in Vista, but with secondary schools in general, is to move from me to we. And that's kind of our mantra. We need independent contractors. I taught physics. I usually was the only teacher who was teaching physics, right? We need that content expertise. That's a me part, but the we part is we need to be acting in unison collectively for our kids. And that's the whole idea of this instructional playbook. And I appreciate very much the staff's engagement and your willingness as a district, as a board of trustees, as a superintendent to push this work forward. I'm hopeful, and this is the conversation Dr. Doyle had many, it was probably, I think it was pre-pandemic, but certainly coming out of the pandemic. Conversation we had is there's a unique opportunity to potentially change the accountability models in this state and really nationally. And we believe it's that opportunity is still there to where you're actually building accountability models on measures of systemic responsibility and specifically centering the student experience. And that's the path and the journey that we're all on together.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think we've got all questions and comments from trustees. Appreciate the work that you've done with our district and Rancho Minerva and your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Do we need a bathroom break before Measure LL presentation?
Actually needs to walk around.
Do you two need a bathroom
Yes.
break? Okay, I'm gonna take a 6-minute break and then come back at 8:54. 8:54.
We will resume our meeting as it is 8:54. The next item on the agenda is Measure LL Facility Bond Micro Workshop 9E.
Thank you, President Alvarado. So, Dr. Bush is gonna kick it off, and I did want to remind the board that we did give you a break for 2 weeks with, texts of pictures and things like that. And the team still worked very hard, by the way, and that's why most of the pictures you'll see in here are the pictures that we would have sent you in your text over the past 2 weeks. We just gave everyone a break, so it's really exciting to know that even when we're on vacation, great work has happened. Thank you, Dr. Bush.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doyle. This is what we hope will be a brief overview. This evening, there are a variety of photos that are in here. As indicated by Trustfield Smithfield, even the photos that you're going to be seeing here don't frankly do justice to the work that has been conducted this summer. And although these are recent as when the board agenda was presented, the facilities don't look like that anymore, just a week later. In fact, one of the most exciting photos that I have sent, well, let me rephrase that, exciting for me and probably for nobody else, I sent to Dr. Doyle earlier today, which was of those fabled electrical panels, which by the way, are not panels in the wall. They are 9-foot structures that are huge that I sent to Dr. Doyle that are being set up right now. And we're getting ready to see our first building electrified. So these are huge steps that are taking place that the Measure LL team has. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be looking at this evening. Some of my favorite topics around Beaubier Elementary School, the reconstruction process, as specifically, we're going to be talking about CEQA, which is a beautiful acronym that we'll dive into briefly, but these are also the sequential steps as we move closer and closer to completing that design process and beginning the construction process. Also have a brief overview of the Vista Magnet Middle School, the front entrance. Dr. Doyle and I had a wonderful meeting earlier today with the city manager, Mr. Conley, who is graciously understands the situation, is going to be extending their kind hosting of parking at the Civic Center for faculty and staff while we work through this, and is working in concert and partnership with us, pushing through many of the items to ensure that we have that sewer lines back up and functioning. Exciting developments at RBV Career Technical Education Complex. You will see photos today. And again, as Trustee Smithfield indicated, it's not the same today. Steel is up all through the building. The final steel remnants are being put in. We're seeing decking going in place. Everything is happening and clicking along. We'll be looking at some photos of Vista High School new classroom building, those updates there, and then exactly what will be on either the consent or action items for you this evening as brought over to you. As always, I invite Machan to join me here. Grace, we'll turn it over to you to give us some broad stroke overviews of these rather complicated topics, but necessary in order to build these facilities for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Losher. Esteemed board members, staff, faculty, community members, everybody's part of getting this work done. So as Dr. Losher had mentioned, CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. And whenever we do construction, we need to make sure that we double check that we're not negative, that we are not negatively impacting the environment. And so the good thing about Beaubier is that it already has been a school and we're not building more, we're actually replacing it. So that qualifies us to file a notice of exemption. So later on, basically, we're asking for the board to approve the filing. There's a board resolution to file the notice of exemption to comply with CEQA requirements for Beaubier reconstruction. Okay, Vista Magnet. So as Dr. Doyle had mentioned, we want to bring you up to speed. And as you're driving by Civic Center Drive, you can actually see it's already changed drastically from this. So on the right-hand side, that's the tower on the north side, which is basically already, as if you drove by today, it's already stuccoed. So we're trying to, we're pushing the contractor, even though we've encountered a lot of Easter eggs on this project, is pushing to try, and we've been phasing portions of it to try to open it up in time to minimize impact of opening up school. So that's the reason why the north tower is going to be opened up first, because then the stairs from that civic center street and the ramp associated that leads right underneath that tower into the temporary office that you enter Vista Magnet right now. That's why we're starting, we've gotten that almost done. And then if you go to the next slide, Will, you can see it looks like an excavation site, but that's basically prepping for the seat walls because this is going to become the historic plaza where there's an additional outdoor learning center. And then previous slide, you had seen that there were storm drains because when we had excavated for the front entirety of the front entrance, which will provide perfect shade for when students come in the morning. It's also an additional outdoor gathering space for whatever activities happen at this school. Basically, there were no storm drains. And so now we have a full system that will work. And when the rains come again, it will drain properly.
That totally explains why every time there was a rain at the Magnet Middle, there was a pool out front. Now we know why.
Then on the right-hand side, during. Okay.
True.
All right, so we're gonna go to the parking lot update. And so as Dr. Loescher had discussed, there's a sewer that also runs through the entirety of the parking lot. And so it impacts the rest of the community. And so basically, the design team hustled to put a new design back into the city. We're in the process of the city approving the plans. And as soon as they approve the plans, we can then move forward with the work. And then in terms of fiscal responsibility, we'll be discussing that later further with the city and the contractor. And this is a beautiful picture of what happened. And I know just a little section, but we're gonna have to extend it further out. So this was a preliminary sketch that was sent to the city. So right in the middle, there's a line right in the middle of that. Yeah, so on this picture, it doesn't look very long, but in reality, it's over 300 lineal feet. It extends from Civic Center Drive all the way to where the fields start. So that's a long run. Yeah. Better to find it now. In the parking, oh, if you.
The sewer line.
Yes,
Okay.
sewer line, yep,
All right.
yep. And that's a necessary ingredient, obviously, when you flush a toilet, you want to go somewhere. So,
Yes.
yeah. And then so the storm drain that was non-existent on the front. We basically have to go into the center core of campus to pick up existing storm drains. And so while we trenched through the middle of the campus, we basically encountered existing utilities that service the school. And so if you go to the next slide, we encountered, left behind, a huge tank that used to service the old boiler plant that used to heat the site. And so this is always a, you know, do we, no, we're gonna leave it, but we had to cut through a section that connected that tank to the rest of the campus. We don't have the time or the luxury to chase it all the way through. It's, but you know, this is an example of when you're in the midst of construction. Do you leave these things behind for other people to inherit, to remove at that time? Or do you take it out while you were there when you were building? So that's a discussion for another day. That's the Easter egg that we found.
I say rotten it.
Okay. So this is just a pictorial diagram of the things that we encountered, but the pictures absolutely showed the magnitude of what we've encountered. So, but we're rushing to make sure that that center core is put back so that Vista Magnet will be back in session when the students come back. Okay,
Real
Rancho.
quick,
Yes.
just talk about the delay of the parking lot, just so the board is aware of the impact of the delay. Yeah.
Oh.
The date.
Yeah, so we have not released an official date to reoccupy the parking lot. The reason for that is although we're working with the city on expeditiously getting the plans back, we have certain things that apply to schools that don't necessarily apply to the city. One of those things is our green code and how many trees we have to have in a parking lot and canopy structures, and we won't bore you any further with it, other than it's not avoidable without making major modifications. However, as you know, and as this board has dealt with over the course of years, trees and sewer lines do not mix. So we are in the process of working with the city on looking at the barriers for those planter boxes to make sure that we are all in agreement that they are more than adequate. That final review, once that occurs, will be able to start us with a predictive time clock to count down when the parking lot will be open. At this time, we're hoping for late October. But we will see with the final review coming in. After the final review comes in, we will then do our constructability review and timeline. And we'll have what we believe will be a fairly accurate timeline to communicate to the city and to the faculty and staff.
So in the meantime, our staff will need to park right across the street, not in their parking lot. And then one last thing, there was some question about activities that the city is running with regard to safe parking lots. The safe parking lot, the activity our city is running for homeless folks is not happening in that parking lot. It's on the other side of the building, close to the library. Just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that people have asked that question.
Just to let you know, I try to stay up next door, but I happened to get on there. And there was a comment about, I'm never gonna vote for another bond again. Just, all they're doing is just a facelift on Vista Magnet Middle, and I had to clear it up that like, no, there was a lot more to it than that. So, I got you.
Well, thank you. We all know that the Nextdoor app has been kind to our construction and to conveying timely and accurate information to the community.
Well, I did my job. I did actually corrected the record that like, it was.
Thank you, Kyle.
Moving on to RBV.
Okay, RBV. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is because the new CTE building has to be tied in to the main campus electrical. And so we had to trench through, there's the back corridor spine that you basically students can enter buildings 100 and 200 from the student lot. So this is in that area. So they have to tie back in and cut trench across that fire lane access. And then that's to tie in the fire, domestic, as well as electric. So there were 3 utilities that were tied in. And so this corridor will also be opened back up when students come back. And basically, this one is, as you know, the exterior canopy. I don't know, Dr. If you could look at, there's a diamond pedestal in the front to the right.
Yeah, the famous pedestal.
Yes, that famous
There's the
pedestal.
famous pedestal.
Yeah. So we just received pictures that the remainder, that's the pier that's gonna hold the exterior covered canopy.
That in
for the
fact
front
now
entrance.
does hold.
Yes. Yes, so everything's
It's
fitted
up.
up together. Yeah, it went up today. Right, and then if you see, so basically you see the posts that are leaning, that's the fence posts, but then now they've already been set with concrete. And so when there was a question about, is there a compound and fencing that protects that area from the fire lane? Because the dirt over here on the left-hand side is a fire lane. You have to keep that open. Those fence posts are gonna be the beginnings of the compound to the right. And then I think that would be a perfect, on the right-hand side, the dust collector equipment. So yeah, while the students are working in the construction lab, cutting the wood, they're not gonna be inhaling all of that plywood dust because it's gonna have a really amazing dust collector. We nicknamed it rock blocks.
I want one for my house.
Yeah. This is a great sign too, where you have the mechanical ducts going up and you have all of the electrical, because this is something that people usually don't see because they're behind ceiling tiles or behind walls. But just like your lungs are inside your body, you need it to breathe. And then the blood veins, vessels, arteries, and veins are like the electrical powering everything up. Okay, Vista High School, a lot has gone on here too. So the front admin concrete sidewalk has to meet code compliance. So that's why if you drove by in the past couple of weeks, on Monday, this was all poured. And then as of today, the fixing of the landscaping adjacent to the sidewalk has already been prepped. They're going to be receiving sod next week. And the irrigation heads have been moved. And then on the exterior, there's still scaffolds showing here. But if you've been driving by Beaubier, you can see the scaffolds down. And I think the community is happy and the students are happy because
Remind me, when are we expected to have students inside?
Oh.
Well, we're happy you asked that question, trustee Burke. So what we have is, first of all, is we split the two buildings onto two separate construction schedules. The purpose in doing this is that while they may be contractually under one grouping, they factually on two sides of campus have two completely different groups of people working on them. Also, it allowed for us to do things, for example, like when we have the electrical panels in, to install them in one building and not wait for all the panels to come in to electrify all the buildings. So it's anticipated that building S will be the first one completed. And we're hoping to see this one completed by the end of the first semester of the school year. The second building is still well underway. The estimates is that it would be completed close to the end of the school year, but we're still waiting on final estimates for those items at this time. We're confident enough on the timetable of building S at this time that we're going to now purchase the furniture for it. You have to time that out just perfect and right, because it's a lot of furniture that goes in. You need them to remove the boxes, set it all up. It's part of the package deal. It has to arrive in a specific window of time before the students are in there, but after a significant amount of construction has occurred. So that's something that's about ready to occur. But that's our confidence level at this time for timetables for those two buildings.
And also, don't forget, we had a steel contractor that went under. And then also the long lead time of the electrical panel boards and switchgear, which now is a longer lead time of 80 weeks.
I heard we're gonna be done end of fall, but does that mean spring is when students are going in, or are we pushing it to the fall 2024?
For this building, we're hoping to see students entering the building in the second semester for S.
Late January.
Right. For the other building, it's still too early to say, but it's more likely that that would be something that they move in the summer, but that's for twofold reason. First of all, building S is a general education classroom. Packing and moving those items is a little different than when we talk about the T building over on the track side. Those are primarily science classrooms. That involves packing up mass amounts of science equipment, unpacking, getting to know the new equipment inside the room, the new layouts. It will be a completely different experience for science teachers.
This is just a picture of the painting going on inside the classrooms on building S. The tile for the walls have already been installed on all the bathrooms, and they're actually waiting to start the epoxy floors this week. The ceiling tile grid also has started going in on the first floor in building S.
This is a good picture for the board, because if you look at the bathroom and the tile, actually our student bond ambassadors
Yes.
were involved in designing this design. It's super exciting.
And then we also added work to be done, which is cleaning up the K Relo courtyard. And so as of Monday, that courtyard, the majority of it, concrete has been placed, and people walking by on the school side have been peeking through, and they're so excited because the view from the school out to the new building, this is the connection. This courtyard is going to be very vibrant. So the left picture is basically the lower floor, right where that piece of equipment is. That's where the weight room and ROTC labs are going to be on that level. And then the staircase actually is that opening on the between the two massive CMU. So the center stair. So basically the students on the inside of the building can look out and see over to the courtyard. On the right-hand side, this is the stadium side facing. This portion here is going to be all windows, and that's going to look over the stadium. And that's also a visual connection. And then on the ground floor, it's going to end up being the concrete patios for that level. On the ground floor facing the stadium is the science classrooms. And so they can do all of their experiments if they want to outside on the patio. So it's going to be an exciting
It looks
space.
like a press box.
It will, spoiler alert on that particular suite, we have suggested that it would be an ideal location to host alumni for homecoming. Particularly those that might have been elected to public office, and then hit them up for donations to the school site, because it does directly look straight down the field that's there.
Yeah.
So
So the beauty of that too, actually, Dr. O can go back. The beauty of that, it's a flex classroom space. What does that mean? That means between, if you take the center, there's going to be a skyfold partition that basically can become 2 classrooms, large classrooms, or when the partition is up, you can have a huge meeting gathering space. All right, actually, there's a lot more that has been going on in terms of, on the right-hand side, the metal deck that's going to take the concrete poured into it later. That metal deck has already been completed since this picture. They're actually already up on the 3rd floor, and we're working Saturdays as well to do the welding and the bolting down. So it's changed a lot. Okay, and then for this one is just the authorization to file the notice of exemption for OBR.
I have questions.
Sure.
So I know that we are kind of grandfathered in for exemption, but I want to make sure that we really are like not endangering any wildlife, or, you know, that everything's going to be built, you know, to make sure that we are, as much as we can, meeting CEQA, you know, requirements anyway, even though we're not applying for that, or we don't have to.
Well, what is fascinating about that, and thank you for that comment, Trustee Marco, one of the things that we talked about and we did within our contractor pool and specific selection for Beaubier is we listed out part of our values, whether those be equity considerations and other items, but also sustainability building practices and considerations. And those are built into the considerations of how we selected the contractor. And Menards has an outstanding reputation for exceeding those requirements and ensuring that they pay careful attention to those matters.
But I think CEQA also has to do with sort of wildlife protection type
Yep.
stuff. So, you know, I mean, I know we want to keep coyotes out, and I don't think we have mountain lions in this stuff, but, you know, we want to keep them safe.
We actually do.
We do. Oh, well, thank you. And I'll sleep not well tonight.
Actually do.
But what I was gonna say is, you know, if we can sort of keep, you know, make sure that we have places for birds to nest that won't mess up the courtyards, you know, or the areas where the students have to, you know, things like that. That's stuff like that. Yeah. We have to share that land with critters, so maybe kind to them.
Trustee Kelly, any comments or questions on this presentation?
No, just can't get my unmute button to work very well. Sorry for the delay.
Trustee Vargas?
Excited to get it open.
Trustee
Wait
Smithfield?
till you see it again. You're gonna be like, get this open tomorrow. It's so exciting. Thank you.
So for, we'll vote later on the CEQA resolution, and that's all you need from us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vote to
We're gonna vote
So
on
action
this
item later.
resolution.
tomorrow.
Oh, later on.
Later. Oh, you said tomorrow. I was like, I don't know, honey. I don't.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is 10, the consent calendar. Agenda items 10 through 15, all matters listed on the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, the staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent calendar items.
I would like to pull 14B.
Okay, 14.
It's the first reading of identification and evaluation of individuals for special ed.
All right, so poll 14B. Is that all?
Yeah.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar minus 14B?
So moved.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Smithfield. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
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 Hi.
Motion carries 5-0, so
So 14B.
14B.
So, On the fourth paragraph. Is everybody there?
Where it's the strikeout. where it
Christine
starts.
gets the right page.
I mean, do we all?
It's page 161.
And what is the first words? Because there's.
It's
Or
fourth
struck out Are you looking at this, the fourth paragraph where it starts to the strike out the superintendent or designate? No.
Yeah, a little bit. I just.
Can you pull it up on
Are
the?
you all right?
I can't. So we'll just
Okay.
take me a moment, like, just give me a second.
Okay.
So you want me to continue? Okay, so it says, the district's identification procedure shall include systematic methods for utilizing referrals to parents, blah, 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 agencies, appropriate professionals, and other members of the public, and shall be coordinated with school site procedures for referral of students whose needs cannot be met with modifications to the regular instructional program. So we changed the wording to that. My concern with this wording is coordinated with the school site procedures. So is this saying that every school site is gonna have a different procedure for when a kid is gonna be referred?
No, we should be using the same procedure
I
across
know,
the
but it
district.
doesn't say that.
We can change that if
Can
you'd
we
like.
change
Yeah,
that?
oh yeah, because this is our first read. So if that's something,
Yeah.
so you want to have coordinated district-wide
I don't want
procedures.
each of our sites
Sites
to
have-
be,
got it.
because, yeah,
Mhm.
we all know how that goes.
Okay, so
And
we'll edit
then,
that. Mhm.
The second modifications to the regular instructional whose needs cannot meet to the regular instructional program. I don't think I'm going to change that. I think I just had a question of maybe that being vague too. But I
Oh,
think it
okay.
matters for this policy.
Yeah, it's
It
it's
more
really
matters in our
working
system
after
that we
we've
do.
done those interventions and supports and the
Well, and it's
modifications.
kinda
that- Yeah,
like, you know, you get some teachers that don't have the experience, they don't know the strategies, and when you get teachers that have tried it before they even bring it to your attention,
Yeah.
so.
okay, we'll work on that paragraph a little bit.
So I make a motion to approve 14B.
Well, let me restate it to be clear on the wording. Please,
Oh, yeah.
can we do that?
I guess
Okay,
I have
so,
to do that.
yeah, so, it would be, we're gonna subtract the word school site from the first, second, third, fourth paragraph. And we will insert district procedures, the word district.
District.
Across all schools.
Across all schools, yeah.
Across all schools. District procedures across all schools.
District procedures across all schools, district procedures across all schools. So I'm gonna restate it. We're gonna subtract school site from the fourth paragraph. We're going to insert district procedures across all
Yep.
schools.
And
And I
just
didn't ask if you guys were okay with that. Are you all right?
so just a point of clarification for the board, you're not approving it tonight. We're just gonna make that revision.
We're gonna
and we
make
will
that
be bringing it
revision.
back to you to ultimately.
Because we
approve it
didn't need
later.
to make a motion.
No, you're good. This is good because it gives us
Just
very
said it,
clear
you do
direction.
There was no second, so there's no
Make a
direction.
motion, though. This gives us good, clear direction.
Action.
Okay,
All right,
well, wait, since it's part of the consent.
now we
calendar-
pulled it. It's
pulled
not the consent
pulled it.
calendar.
Oh, okay.
We pulled it. So this is the first reading. So all in favor of approving the deletions, the deletion school site and inserting district procedures across all schools. I need a motion. Oh, you had the motion.
She made a
She
motion.
made a motion.
So, I seconded it. So I would do a friendly amendment to I would do an
Why a
amendment.
friendly amendment?
Well, amend the motion to include that extra word.
You can just make a motion
I-
to make the adjustments that directed to staff.
Okay, well, then rescind your motion.
So I rescind my motion
Okay.
and I make a motion to approve 14B with the changes.
I second.
Okay, moved by trustee Smithfield, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 14B with modifications, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
We'll see it back next month.
We will make that correction. Thank you.
All right, so the next item on the agenda. 16. Discussion item 16A, ratify and approve purchase orders.
Make a motion to approve the purchase order.
I second. Moved by trustee Smith, Bill seconded by myself. Any further discussion? Any questions? All in favor of approving 16A, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? One. All right, the motion carries 4-0 with one abstention, trustee. All right, next item on the agenda, 16B, approval for the 2023-24 LCAP federal addendum.
Quickly, this is an addendum that we have to do to the LCAP and present to the board on a yearly basis to show what we're doing with our federal dollars that are outside of our state dollars. And so it's a requirement that happened as part of COVID when we started receiving the extra funding, and they're asking us to sustain these reports through the expiration of COVID funding. So we'll be doing these yearly for a couple of years. And it's just the federal dollars that we're using. Any questions?
Motion for that or what?
Yes.
Yes. Approved.
Wait,
You have to approve it.
Make a motion to approve it. 16B, I think it is.
Yes, ma'am.
A second.
Moved by trustee Smithfield, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? Questions? Trustee Kelly,
No questions. Thank you.
all in favor of approving 16B, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is 16C, approve recommendations for revision to the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee bylaws.
Thank you very much, President Alvarado, and all of our board trustees. The Citizens Bonds Oversight Committee has a series of bylaws that govern them. During the course of this year, they revisit their bylaws as part of a process of looking at everything they did. They held several agenda topics on this, and they felt that there was a section of their bylaws that could be clarified to make sure that we not only had language there, but also that we met the intent of that language. Specifically, they're asking for what's deemed to be a non-substantive revision to their bylaws on item 3.2, eligibility, sub-item B. It currently reads, no employee, official, vendor, contractor, or consultant of the district shall be appointed to the committee. Meaning that if you are an employee, that you cannot be appointed to the committee. However, upon review, they felt that that missed the intent, which is that you should not work for the school district at any point while you're on the committee. Therefore, they're asking that it be revised to read, no one shall be an employee, official, vendor, contractor, or consultant of the district while serving on the committee. Meaning that you could be appointed, but you would have to resign your post or other items before you actually join the committee. And that while serving on the committee, you could not circumvent the intention of that action by, after being appointed, becoming a contractor or a vendor or an employee. It was their intention that perceptions matter on these issues and that they wanted to be perceived as completely being neutral in these matters. And so they are asking for this revision to their bylaws, and I brought it to you for your consideration for approval.
Do any of these members receive any kind of compensation, any kind of anything for being on this committee?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I see a financial interest in the second, so this may resolve this question, but what if they're married to an employee or a consultant?
These current items do not bar you if you are married to one.
Got it.
Are you suggesting that we incorporate that?
I guess my follow-up question would be, so they sign a conflict of interest form when they apply, I believe?
Correct.
We have to disclose that at minimum.
They would have to disclose that.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to approve 16C?
I make a motion to approve 16C.
I second. Moved by trustee Kelly, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 16C, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is 16D, approve the long-range facility master plan.
I think it would be most appropriate for Dr. Doyle to kick us off on this, given that this has been truly an 18-month process. We do have an entire team of people that were here. We're going to present you with some metrics to go along with this, but I turn it over to Dr. Doyle for the official introduction.
Well, I first want to thank the Renal Clark team for the amazing work you've done. President, the work that you've done in your team. Thank you so much for being patient with us. It was a very long process. Grace and her team did an amazing job. Thank you so much. There was a lot of iterations that we went through. This plan is so heavy that I hurt my back when I lifted it.
Did you bring them?
I should have brought it.
You didn't bring it?
Yeah, well, that's the abbreviated version. I do want to make one statement.
See the one that's big.
Yeah, I do want to make one statement and perhaps a couple of our trustees may want to make a statement too, because they were around when this happened. But this is the first time in my 30 years that our board now has accurate plans about what's our sites, the conditions of their facilities, and professional recommendations from experts in the field. And I think that's the key. Now, there's one caution I would give all of us, myself as a resident as well, is that we have a lot of needs in our district as it relates to facility improvements. It is important to know, and I talk with all the other superintendents around the county, that almost every school district has lots of needs. So while it can become overwhelming and we can get frustrated with ourselves and our school district, it's important to note that this is actually a theme across the entire state of California. But the good news is now we have a health check on every school in our, or we're about to have a health check for every school in our district. And it's very specific about the areas that we need to improve on. So I'm proud of that. It was a lot of work, more than 18 months, really, really hard work. And I know that this is something that the board wanted to have. Now you have very specific information. I'm going to hand it over to trustee Smithfield, because I know that you were with us at the very beginning. This is a momentous evening tonight. It's a very important evening.
So I think back to give me.
Yeah.
When I first, working in the district, we were a mess and I knew that. And I don't have to tell you because I was at Grapevine with the plumbing and all that. But, so as a new board member, Devin Bodishka had put me on the team. Was it him or who was it?
I think it was just before you came on board.
No.
About that time.
Yeah, we had our very first committee to get everybody together to say, let's look at the needs in the district and the possibility of putting a bond on the election coming up. And sure, I sat on there, but I don't, you know my level of knowledge for this. And so I was listening, blah, 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 and a person at the time said, well, I'm just starting to work on the facilities plan. And I have to tell you, she'd been in our district in that position for many, many years. And not knowing, I raised my hand, like, you need to tell me you don't have a long-range facility plan? And we didn't. We never did this. So when you guys came on board and we did the walking through the sites and the engineers and they're looking at, you pick was it you, and they pick the thing up and all these black widows come out and I have all these little memories in my mind and the whole time I'm thinking like, if we had done this earlier on, a lot of these things never would have even existed. So I'm very proud and excited that from this point on, when we look at a site regardless, we can take that thing, which is really this big, and go to that school, and here's what they found when the engineers and everybody came, and here's what they suggested, which I think if we had had that going on before, the way this bond played out would have been totally different. Totally different. So thanks, you guys. I learned a lot from you, very interesting, so I can converse with my husband just a little bit when we talk about these things. Sorry,
We will fix that.
did I do something?
No, we just noticed a typo that's not appropriate. We'll fix it.
Okay,
On this?
don't worry, go on, go on.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
see.
no, we're celebrating, we're celebrating,
It's going great.
we're celebrating.
Anyway, good job. I'm excited. I'm excited for the next fund that we go after. And I didn't feel that before. So I am, because we have a path and we know what we need to do. So, and these guys are great. Like, to watch them at work is crazy. Jessica with the money, oh, we can do this funding and we can do this, and then Kristen and Steve, and just all the conversations the committee had got to have.
Thank you so much for sharing, because you've been with us every step of the way. And you,
This is very exciting.
you and our previous board member, Deb Warren, have worked very hard on this, and we appreciate the efforts that you
Kind
have
of
put
kept
into
me
it.
up to speed, so I
So the purpose of tonight, I'm gonna highlight this and hand it off right now, we still have a lot to get through, is for the board, we will present to you the draft version of the long-range facility master plan, which is inclusive of every school in the district. And the board tonight, if you're willing to approve it, then we would move to make them public, for which we have not done yet. As soon as the board approves it. One caveat that's very important, by the way, we've noticed a couple typos, so we will make sure we fix that. One really important element of it is, as we were working with the board president and vice president, they did ask us to include the 4 schools that were originally held back. The 4 schools that were on the asset management committee, we did include them. We put a note at the top that they were, those 4 schools were included in the asset management committee, but we felt it was only fair to be transparent with our community and share all of the information. So this, I just wanted full transparency. I wanted you to know that if you were to approve this tonight, you will be approving every school in the district with the caveat of that statement above those 4 schools. So with that, Dr. Loescher, why don't you kick it off? It's not a long presentation. Kick it off and walk them through just the components of the plan, and then ultimately we'll hand it back to our president. And of course, Renell Clark's here to answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. As we kick this off, we're going to present you with just a few items, just to metrically put this into perspective of what has been accomplished in terms of this plan. First of all, Smithfield is, Trustee Smithfield has referred to this as the abbreviated plan. That is accurate. This is actually the top sheet. There's an additional 1,295 pages. Those 1,295 pages are, in fact, abbreviations of tens of thousands of pages of engineering reports, photographs, and other supporting items. And you just can't publish all of that and have it, which is why we require the expertise of Renell Clark and this amazing team to help us and go off and do this. In terms of hours invested, what did we get for our investment in doing this? Because we get knowledge based upon this. But in terms of calculations, let's put this in perspective. The team at Renell Clark put forward over 5,400 hours of work to compile this. What does that equate to in our terms? It's the equivalent of 4 full-time employees working every day of the week for a year, nonstop, to make this happen. For the terms of the accomplishments of making this happen on our behalf, as we look to the timeline, which is listed for you in the slides, this is a process that in many places takes upwards of 3 years. They spread that same amount of time over 3 years. Instead, that time was concentrated to amass precisely what's there. In terms of a document, what's really important about this, although it will have a publication, is that it's a living document. It will change over time. When we're talking about a document that's almost 2,000 pages long, statistically speaking, we will find errors for years to come. The Great Gatsby still has over 400 errors in it. So, these are the sorts of things that we will discover along the ways, and the information will change with time, but this gives us a baseline to start with. So when you're looking at the sections of this, you're looking at an executive summary that's intended to stand on its own. The educational specifications, again, we've been through sort of an overview of these items, really give us the way that we hope that our schools will move and flow. Our material standards are continuously under development. This gives us a formalized list, so that way we can be more effective as a team, not just in design and execution, but in terms of more economically delivering items to schools on a consistent basis. We want consistent experiences for our faculty, staff, community, and students as we go from place to place. For furniture standards, these again are under development, but this is a way that we're able to have that consistency of experience. It's frustrating. I will speak going back to my teaching days, to go to professional development on the things that you might be able to do if you only had something in your room that's not there. But to have those standards so that way you can execute across the board, no matter what school site you're located, on the most relevant and current pedagogical standards and techniques and strategies. In terms of looking at facility needs assessment, again, we've been through those items, a high level overview there. Those are the thousands of pages that follow. For site master plans, these are broken down into a site profile, binding inventory, existing site maps, proposed master plans. These are not detailed plans. This gives us a high level overview for future planning efforts. We're not locked into this, but it also gives us a financial assessment of what it would cost to do today. But keep in mind, market forces, inflation, all of these things. This plan is a wonderful achievement that should be celebrated, but the financial projections are obsolete starting tomorrow morning. The price will have gone up. Therefore, every day that we wait is a day where these things will become more expensive. Looking through the executive summary, again, you will see that process in an introduction as to what the plan is and what is involved in terms of the master planning. As we look to the next slide, we've reviewed the inputs and outputs of the facility master plan, what is involved in it, what's not involved in it, and why it's there. You have examples of these site master plans. This one here from Foothill Oak, and some of those estimates of what things would take and what it would look like.
And each of the schools follow an exact template, so it's similar format.
It is extraordinarily similar format. You will see some exceptions clearly, like the Darwin property, which is, a 50-acre site where there's not we don't have plans because it's a nature preserve. But yeah, these follow a very similar format. Our intention on publishing this so that way the community can access it is that from this document, the high level document, is to be able to, first of all, publish it in its entirety, should somebody want to download it. We have a copy here at the district office, but also to break it down section by section, school site by school site, so people can download their school site plans without trying to find it and go through, and that they're able to look for it. For that reason, there will be some differences between this particular document and the online publication. For example, for these school site plans, the definitions pages, the opening few pages, they tell you what the definitions are, how to read the school site plan. It only appears once in this document. We've put it in every school site plan so parents don't have to go look for it, or teachers or anybody. It's just it was more work, but we wanted to make sure it was more accessible to them. So with that, I think we turn it back over to you for any feedback and comment. The entire team is here to receive our thanks and praise for everything that they have done. But this is the long range facility master plan as it exists today.
I'm gonna go in order. If that's okay. Trustee Kelly, do you have any questions or comments or feedback on the presentation?
No questions. And just to add to Dr. Doyle's feedback that, we felt it was important to include the school sites that the asset management committee reviewed, because that was some of the data that they looked at in coming to their conclusions. So I hope it's not misleading to have included those sites, but we felt it was really important to make sure everybody had access to the data.
Trustee Vargas?
Yes, so it's a living document, so with it, we're updating it as much as possible. But with that, like, are we doing like a robust update, like in 15 years, or like, what's the assessment on that?
Generally there's different levels of updates. So every few years, you typically go back and you perform some light reviews based upon new information that you have. For more robust reviews, you're looking at 5 to 10 years out. Different events might trigger that. New knowledge that might be really irrelevant and important about how you might prioritize projects. Oftentimes, as we take a deeper dive and deeper look into projects, we start to discover new things. It also becomes relevant oftentimes if school boards and school districts pursue bonds. And after receiving a bond, you want to do some further explorations on school sites and options, and we discover new information at those times. But regular interviews is every few years, and then deeper dives every 5 to 10, 15 years out.
Got it. Thank you.
Trustee Swizza?
I'm good.
Trustee Morocco?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I first of all, thank you so much for your work. I want to thank everybody for their work. This document, as we've gotten the snippets, I'm constantly looking for it. I'm like, oh my God, where's this? Where's that? Because it is something to refer back to, especially when talking about facilities and things like that. I do have a question though on the site plans for each site. It gives the acreage. Is that usable acres or is that just the total acres?
Come on. It's usable acres.
It's usable. Okay, all right, thank you. That's very helpful.
We had to settle on some definitions.
Okay,
And I don't have any questions, but I want to acknowledge the speed in which you guys all put this together. Thank you so much. It makes our work as a board a little bit clearer as we think about what our next steps need to be or may be. So I appreciate that energy and that knowledge that you brought forth in this document. All right.
And for us, it was actually a pleasure to actually get to know all of you, all your sites, working with your facilities teams, everybody. It's exciting for us to see where this is going to take you. And I think it's going to be really exciting as you go through the process. One of the things on the updates to Trustee Vargas is what you do is you actually start to update the plan to show projects completed. And that's actually a really exciting thing to see when you start to indicate, we've done this on the site, we've done this. And you start to see monumental change happening over this period of time. I'm updating Grossmont Union High School District's final plan like this, and we're watching all the things that were orange that had to be done turn to blue. It's pretty exciting.
That's wonderful. So on that note, I would like to make a motion to approve this with
Adjustments.
an adjustment. It says Maria Alvarado, not Martha. And so if y'all could change my name, I will make a motion to approve 16B.
We'll make sure we do that.
I would second that motion.
Okay, moved
We'll
by,
check all the board members' names.
moved by myself and seconded by Trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? Trustee Kelly,
None for me, thanks.
further discussion here? All in favor of approving 16D, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you for the.
Thank you. I'm just thinking of the Santana song.
Yep.
Yeah, Maria. All right. Next on the agenda is 16E,
Authorized filing of California Environmental Quality Act notice of exemptions for Bobier Elementary School reconstruction project.
Just gonna sit back for my tunnel's okay.
Uh, Earlier this evening, you received our Measure L micro presentation. This was the exemption that was discussed, which is now formally an action item for your consideration.
Move to approve 16E.
Second.
Moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by trustee Smithfield. She beat you by a second. Probably not in real time. It's probably the delay, but it's the delay. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving 16E, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda, 16F. Authorize staff to enter into an agreement to conduct a community survey utilizing services from True North Research.
So back in January, the board directed me to work with staff to begin to kind of ramp up the process for consideration for going for a new facility bond in the year 2024. We've since then, under the direction of Amy, she's worked with a variety of different organizations to begin to kind of set those pieces in place. And so tonight she has to share with you one of the key pieces in place as we approach that kind of window that's about to open as it relates to consideration for the bond, going for a bond. Tonight, there is no decision about going for a bond. It's more about taking action steps to gather the necessary information so that in the future you can make a decision about whether or not you want to move for a bond. Amy, go ahead.
So what you see here, is a proposal. This is just for the, community survey. So working, with our financial advisors, key timing of when you do a community survey. Obviously, you don't want to do it during or right after tax collection to ask them how they feel about paying more taxes. This year, because it's a little awkward, because April really is October 15th. And so ideally, we want to do this survey before we get into September, October. Previously, back in 16-17, they had bundled the communications and the survey together. We've separated the two because we wanted to make sure that we got a jump start on the community survey to make to give them enough runway to develop those questions, to work on the survey while we continue our search on a communications firm. And so this actually is the same firm that we used back in 2017. We're just contracting with them directly. They are located in North County. They work with a lot of districts in San Diego County. And so the proposal is looking at the services they provided and recommendations and referrals that we chose this firm to begin this community survey while we continue our search for the communications firm.
Make a motion to approve 16
F.
Sorry, I already crossed it out.
Second.
Moved by trustee Smithfield, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion or comments, trustee Smithfield?
Do I have any?
Yeah.
No, go ahead, I might, but I gotta form it first.
Trustee Morocco?
Just quick pointing out, the cost of this is $28,850, and that's for how long? That's just to do the preliminary. Okay. Okay, this one.
Which was, I believe, similar to what it was the last.
Yeah, it was 33 or 35,000 the last time, but it was because it was a bundle, they were actually a subcontractor. So I think part of it was the facilitation of it. So contacting directly, this was only 28,000.
Okay, so there might be additional costs incurred after.
With once we bring the communications on board, yeah.
Any other further questions or discussion about this item, trustee Vargas?
Do we expect to have other agreements with True North following the survey, or is this the only one?
If we chose to, and some districts do like, usually like a springtime or a couple months before, just to recheck the pulse. We could do an amendment to this existing one, or look for a different firm.
And I believe we've done that in the past. I used them twice.
And is this our same one that we used 4 or 5 years ago?
Mhm.
Got it. And with that, what's the timeline and where they're gonna be taking the pulse of the community?
We would want to engage, hopefully as early as next week. So that the survey would be able to hopefully like mid-August, early September, and then they would come back and do the results. Yeah, we'll need a few weeks they'll develop questions. The nice thing about using the firm is they were well aware of the district's, the environment the district was in back then. And so they already had strategies on how they worked with that situation. And so they already know our district. So that's a little, a little bit stepping off point. And so hopefully we'll be like drafting questions, we'll bring them back for review. And once we're good with the questions, then they'll proceed with the survey. So hopefully by sometime in August, depending on how many iterations.
Perfect, thank you.
So, when we do this, I think it's real important. I don't even know you do this for the pulse, after the pulse. But, somewhere we have to show them everything we've accomplished. Because unless you drive those areas, you don't see what's going on. And then you have to be ready for the other. Oh, you said you were gonna do every single.
That's where the communications comes in.
That's where they're familiar with.
Yes.
Are they familiar of? I want to watch my words, the disaster of this.
So the original communications firm, they actually, if they merge with another firm, then they merge with a different, they kind of created their own. So depending on where we went, if we went with the same folks, then they would be, I'm not quite sure because I wasn't here back then, how much they remember, because we're still in that research of the
Well,
firm, but
I'm just talking like
Oh.
after, so when they advertised it to the community. There were a lot of things they promised, they contracted everything else without any of us knowing anything. Blah, 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 all those things, which some of it has created a lot of distrust in our community for us because. Some people, even some board members, were under the impression. That they were promised that something was gonna happen at every single school site with the bond money. And then we know all the estimates, all the figures we got were just pulled out of the air, so. I feel we have to do a little damage control.
correct, yes, and that we would work with the communications firm that is selected.
And will we do that first before the polls, or will we do that? Follow me where I'm going with
I
this?
follow you. So the goal would be to bring someone on by the August 10th board, to bring someone forward in the August 10th board meeting. So that way there is that overlap, because our preliminary conversations and having those conversations with the survey, the community survey firm, they may suggest that based on, because they'll do the interviews with the district, that they may want to do some communications
Okay,
first
all right.
and maybe do the survey like early September or mid-September.
And if I could add, with the wall data, like, is there a path to fix it? There's no support, there's no reason to put something forward that's not gonna be passed.
Right, but I think sometimes with education, we can switch that.
But that was similar to the last one. There was a conversation about whether or not it was viable or not viable.
Yeah. There was a reason why we didn't push it in 2016.
That's right.
Yes, it was tabled.
Yeah.
Trustee Kelly, any questions or comments, or did I ask you already?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
Okay. All right, seeing no further questions or comments?
Is there a motion for?
No.
Yes. Okay.
Wait.
Seconded, yeah, seconded.
Yeah, wait, I wrote it down.
I think I know.
Yeah, it's trustee Smith, I wrote it down.
Okay, then I do have a comment.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
I think that, I'm leaning towards tabling this and putting it off because I think the timing's not right, considering that there was a vote to consolidate 2 school sites. I think it's gonna be really, really hard to come back from that, as well as all the stuff coming back from Bond LL. And I know that we had said that we were gonna go forward, but I think that we should maybe hold off until memories have had a time to cool down and forget about this consolidating 2 school sites. So I'm gonna be a no on this.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call for the vote.
So can I ask Raina a question?
Yes,
So, I understand totally 100% what you're saying. But do you not think with the education, I mean, once we give the people a plan for where their students are gonna be and they feel comfortable, they'll probably feel a little bit better.
I think we're gonna be devastating families' lives, especially families that are the most vulnerable and can't afford it. And I don't think that that's gonna be forgotten anytime soon. I think that, and with my marketing background, I'm gonna say messaging ain't gonna help us. So I would rather save that $28,000 for right now and save it for, and go back and relook at this, revisit it in a few years, or if something changes and we don't proceed with the consolidation for whatever reason, then we can revisit it. But at this point, I'm a no.
So, but my next question
Sure.
is. This going to is just to get the pulse to see if that,
Correct.
because you're right, if that comes up, then there's no chance, then no, we shouldn't go forward with it, but I would like to find out what people are feeling.
So this is just a market research type thing. Okay, I thought it was message. I thought there's communication.
That would be the second piece, would be to bring on the communications firm, because first you do communicating to the community about the progress that we made, the conditions of our facilities. And then you could do a check-in, say in the spring, to do another pulse to see how the communication's going, how the community feels. And then the board has to decide, oh, the number of days, it's usually around August 1st is when you have to vote to put it onto the November ballot. And the communications firm is working the whole time. They're just changing versus communicating what the district has done. And then once the board decides to move forward, then that communications firm can turn into the elections, promoting the elections, but then that's separate from the district's communications effort, because it has to be an independent effort.
I just think that that money could be better spent at this point somewhere else right now. Maybe we might want to look at it closer to the end of the year or maybe next year. But I'm thinking the timing's not right for us to even proceed any further with this. That's what I'm thinking.
I guess on that note, I think, if this is approved tonight, asking the entity to take a pulse, based on the fact that we're closing 2 schools, how does the community feel about that?
I agree with that, but I would like the pulse. Just for my,
And then just to highlight something that Amy said is if this moves forward, there's a committee that does part of the communication that's separate from the district, because you can't use public funds for campaign partisan elections, correct, Dr. Bell?
That's correct. There's a whole procedure in place, bylaws in the state of California that require that. I will make sure the board sees all of that timeline. We are not close to that at this point in time. This is more, the district has a right to survey the community to find out what the possibility would be. This guy, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this action item, this is only to gather information. It is not, the board is not making a decision tonight about whether you're moving forward or not moving forward with the bond.
Well, it's to hire this firm.
Yes, that's correct. But only to gather information. You're not making a decision on whether or not you're moving forward or not moving forward with the bond.
All right,
But I'm thinking that if we start, the more money that we put towards gathering information, the more likely that we're gonna want to proceed with the bond because we're already that far into it.
Only if we get a good, like Cipriano said. If it's not worth it, forget it. Why waste more money and everybody's time and energy? But then on the other hand, oh, they're all gone, such a grace. Sitting within all these committees, because I'll leave my own personal thing about bonds and my husband's thing, we need so much to fix really bad sites in our district, like really bad, and then that's just putting it on and off again. Like, let's just say the pulse is what it is, but it's not as bad as we thought, and would further what they do. We could probably feel like we could pass it. I would hate to lose that opportunity to keep going now that we're on a roll. We've got all the plans going. But I think it's important before we do that to find out if it's worth it. So I have to spend $28,000, like really, I'll do it for $28,000. But, so.
I've done market research. I wouldn't do it for 28,000.
So your comment, I think, laying on the table wouldn't be the appropriate thing, not that it's being, and you would want it to be postponed to a certain time or postponed definitely or postponed indefinitely. Laying on the table is different. It's like if we had to.
I didn't say table it.
Yeah, you did.
No.
You said table it first and then you said I'll be voting no. You did say that.
If I use table, I use the wrong word.
I just want to.
Yeah.
Get it clarified, but I think what really, maybe your intent was postpone indefinitely or postpone definitely or postpone to a certain time.
Well, that's what table means.
No, that's not what tabling
It
means.
means you put it on the table and then you have to vote.
It's not what it means.
Okay.
But the point is that what you prefer it not to be even,
Well, I postpone it. I mean, I don't know when. I don't, indefinitely.
okay.
President Alvarado, trustee Kelly has a question.
Go ahead, trustee Kelly.
Hi, I only wanted to concur with trustee Smithfield on the comments that, this is something that, the school consolidation decision was twofold. It was due to declining enrollment and the state of our facilities. And we know from the long range facilities master plan that we have some serious issues to bring our school sites into safe and equitable standards for all the students in the district. So I just wanted to state my support for dipping a toe in the water to get the information we need to know whether or not we ought to proceed, given how the community feels about voting for another bond.
All right, I would like to know what I guess the feel or the perspective is in our community, so I will be voting yes on it. So is there a second though to postpone to a certain time?
There's a motion on the floor. We have to vote on the motion.
No, you could have two motions.
Then,
I think there's consensus, we can just take the vote and then go from there if it fails. Or not.
Okay. All in favor of approving 16G, say aye.
Aye.
16.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, 16. Please note in the record that it's 16F.
Yes.
I'll restate it. All in favor of approving 16F, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So we have, the motion carries 4-1 with trustee Morocco voting no on 14F. All right, the next on the agenda is 16G, school consolidation timeline, Beaumont Elementary School and Rancho Minerva Middle School.
Okay, so before Dr. Loescher jumps into a very brief slide deck and kind of asking for your thoughts on it. I want to make a couple of statements as superintendent. I was an employee at Crestview when this process happened. So I personally understand how it feels. I also was in the district when we had the unfortunate process where we had to leave with all of them. So I know how that feels. I also had 3 sons who attended Rancho Minerva Middle School. So this is a difficult process. And those of us who are on the team at the district level, our job is to follow through on the directions that the vote board gives to us. And sometimes those directions are difficult. And this is a difficult process. We knew that this process would be difficult from the beginning. I think it's important for the record for everyone to know that our responsibility, no matter how difficult the process, is to carry out the direction of the board. So over the past 18 months, starting with the long-range facility master plan and all the work that went into that, which led to a conversation with the board about an asset management committee. The board then directed us to stand up an asset management committee, for which we shared back in January and February, a timeline for the asset management committee, which was based on state criteria. We followed through on that process. It was unfortunate. No one wants to talk about these conversations. It's important to note that over 80% of the school districts in the state of California are faced with exactly the same conversation. Very, very disturbing for anyone to participate in it. And we have, to the best of our ability, worked with each of the 4 sites. We've met with them in person. We've had conversations in English and in Spanish. We've sent more than 10 different communications in addition to meeting. And I want to read a paragraph from one of the communications, because I think it's important to underscore the sensitivity of this topic. And I want to convey to board members that we feel sensitivity as well as the staff that has to follow through on their directives. So what I wrote, this is the one paragraph in the communication we sent to each of the 4 schools after the board had voted to consolidate schools. I wrote, I write to you with a heavy heart and a sincere sense of sadness. We all are experiencing regarding the topic of school consolidation. As parents and as educators, we love our children and we love our schools. Our schools are the central gathering point for learning and for growth, not just for our children, but also for our families. This is why the topic of school consolidation is so very difficult and emotionally draining. I can assure you that our school board has approached this topic with empathy, with respect, and careful consideration. And I wrote other paragraphs, but I just want to underscore the fact that we all are disturbed and disheartened by this conversation. But ultimately, it's our responsibility to follow through with the directives of the board. So tonight is the next step in that process. It doesn't make us happy to have this conversation, but ultimately we're responsible to bring to you a recommended timeline for the closure process for those 2 schools. Ultimately, it's the board's decision what you would like us to do. The board can say, we're going to have the timeline be longer than you're recommending. Excellent, that's fine with us. Or you could say we want it to be shorter or exactly what we're recommending today. But based on the feedback we received from the long-range facility master plan and the current status of Bovier and the Bovier construction project, there's a relationship between these 2 topics. We have made some recommendations tonight. I'm Dr. Loescher. Again, I want to thank you for leading it. I know that you worked with all the members of the Asset Management Committee. And to the best of your ability, you tried to lead it with humility and with sensitivity, and we do appreciate the work that you're doing. So go ahead and walk us through the timeline at this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doyle, and thank you for reading that paragraph, because I think it summarized very much how many of us feel. When we privately talked, and we talked earlier today, and you indicated it would be okay for me to share this as a private conversation between us. We both were teachers. Neither one of us got into teaching thinking we would close schools. That's never a conversation that occurred. But we did it for different reasons, but we recognize that as we move through school systems, district systems, that these are really complex matters and difficult decisions have to be made. As we enter the next phase of looking at this, there's some new terminology to be introduced. So we've listed that terminology. Not all of it is for tonight. It's to give a preview of some of the items to come. We'll be focusing the discussion tonight around the first item, which is consolidation timeline. Now, when we look at the board vote on June 22nd, there were two items that actually were being addressed. One was regarding school consolidation. That's a separate subject than moving a school. Moving a school is a different topic that involves looking at designs and development. So that's a separate one, and that's incumbent upon deciding the first one of school consolidation timeline. So consolidation timeline is defined as the date selected by the Board of Education for the final consolidation of that school site. That means the closure of the school site, the CDS code, and the records that might go with that. Other things that go along with that on a later date are reboundary and logistics considerations, our communication and relocation timeline, our rules, regulations, and contract obligations, and all of the support plans for students, families, and the community that go along with that. So what we've done here is tried to demonstrate at a very high level overview, sort of what those timelines look like. So that way you're aware of it. And you're going to see that we list, for example, for Beaumont Elementary, if the consolidation timeline for your consideration were to be on June 30th of 2024, keeping in mind legally, that's as soon as that can happen. The schools are open this upcoming year. If we were to look at that, we would have to look at reboundary and logistics considerations with final determinations to be made about December 9th of this year. That's because we need to have communication, relocation, sampling timelines of initiating and letting parents know, in fact, when the timeline is for consolidation. We need to initiate that in August. It needs to have an ongoing flow of communication and working with the school. And we need to be finalized in developing those plans and communicating them out to families by December 2023. That's so that way we can hold community forums and get to more into depth on that in January and February 2024. And then we would have a real relocation plan for those transition plans in place and acted by February 24. Those would involve things like getting families to know their new schools, making sure that there are staffing plans. There's a whole lot of variety of things that go with that. And then we have to have the transportation and support guidelines for what would be next by March 2024 formalized. So this is an example of what a consolidation timeline is. And it's the timeline that dictates the structures that go to support those items.
So let's pause there just for a moment. I'll hand it back to our board president. Would you like us to go through the slide transfer as well, or do we want to talk about the schools individually? What would you like?
Trustee Smithfield, what do you, individual or together?
The two schools, I'd like to talk about them separately.
Okay, trustee Vargas,
Either's fine.
trustee Morocco,
Separately.
trustee Kelly.
Separately.
Okay, separately.
So, and again, the purpose of tonight is super brief here, so it's just one slide because we really can't put actions together until you give us a timeline. So what's on the table now, we're going to hand it back to the board, is what we would recommend based on the information that the board has given us and our long-range facility master plan and the plan as it relates to the building plan for Beaubier has given us. And again, I just want to clarify so everyone remembers that in order for us to break ground at Beaubier, we would need a place for the students to go. And there are options. It doesn't just have to swing. You remember a swing site, we use that term swing site. There, we could bring relocatables onto the site. Of course, would be a very large cost associated with that. Another approach, we don't recommend that, but it's out there. Another one that's out there is redistribution of Beaubier students for 2 years. We don't recommend that either, but it's a possibility. So I just wanted to let you know that that's why there's a relationship between these two conversations. And that came to us from the builders.
Correct.
In the process. So I'm gonna hand it back to the board president. We've given you the information that we have up until now.
All right, well, I mean, I guess we start a discussion on the pros and cons of portables, or the pros and cons of having students go to another site. Wait a minute.
No, the only thing we're talking about now is what's on the site.
The timeline.
The timeline,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm just.
I was just giving you back.
Okay, I have the slide, right?
Yes, you
So
got it.
consideration, I mean, I don't even know how to begin this discussion.
Why don't we start with the motion?
So that means we're gonna divide the question.
Right, we'll divide the schools. So a motion to accept the timeline of Beaumont.
Or you can discuss it, and then when you're done discussing both, then you can make a motion at the end.
Okay,
Typically, you're supposed to have a motion second.
all right, can I get a motion to accept this staff recommendation? With, it's not really a
The timeline.
recommendation, it's a timeline. Make a motion to accept the timeline for Beaumont Elementary.
I'll make it. A
Okay.
second.
So, it was moved by trustee Smithfield and seconded by trustee Morocco to, accept the timeline for Beaumont Elementary. Now, discussion, trustee Smithfield, you made the motion. You want to speak to it first? You don't have to. It's just,
No, I'm just saying, I'm thinking of, yeah, we can't delay. This is like a huge process. We owe it to the parents, we owe it to the students, the teachers to, yeah, do this.
trustee Morocco.
Yeah, my reasoning for seconding it is that as much as I don't want to break that school up and I don't want to put these children through anything more after COVID. But the fact is that I've been on that site and it's dangerous. We are talking about real injuries happening to our staff, happening to children, happening to people. And so it can't be occupied any longer. We really need to make other arrangements, as much as it breaks my heart to do that. But it's just not safe. So for the best interest of our students and our teachers and our staff and our classified employees and administration and everybody, I definitely, we definitely need to close this school sooner rather than later, unfortunately, as much as it really breaks my heart. I wish we could keep it. Yeah, sorry.
Trustee Vargas.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that timeline and with the, just to add to that, I think, we have Monte Vista, Foothill, and then some space at Napa, although it's limited because of magnet status that we can, absorb. That's, a later conversation.
All right, trustee Kelly.
I concur with the timeline.
So since we are in agreement, I agree with the timeline as well. Since we're in agreement with this timeline, then we'll go to the next school site. Okay. All right, the next school site is Rancho Minerva. Do you want to speak to that?
We'll walk through that too as well.
So on Rancho Minerva, again, what we've demonstrated here is this is the soonest legal possible time for it. If the board wanted to specify another time, that is also completely an option. The timeline is very similar for communications, at least for an initial communication to get out. We've have the superintendent's communication to the 4 school communities that was sent out to all of the parents, including the incoming TK class and kindergarten class. We were careful, and IT was so supportive in making sure we were getting those communications out. But if we were to look at that first possible opportunity, we have June 30th, 2024 would be that first possibility. In terms of the other subject regarding preparing Rancho Minerva for a transformation for Vita, that it takes place on a very different timeline, but we first need to establish what a closure date would be. So that way we could begin the process of coming back to the board and say, here's the process for looking at what we would need to do at Rancho Minerva to accommodate here.
All right. Would someone like to speak to the timeline for this school site? Anyone want to, I guess, move to accept this timeline?
I'd like to talk about it before I would make any motion. Because with Rancho Minerva, this one is different. So when we look at Rancho Minerva, we're closing the Rancho Minerva part because we don't really have enough students to sustain all the middle schools that we have right now. So that made the sense, especially since those kids had already been displaced. So I'm not sure. Like, are we under the same crunch, or is this
No.
something we can drag our feet on a little
I'm
bit?
glad you asked that question.
Because, so let me finish
Please do.
the Vita part. In my mind, part of the whole Vita and that area over there, yes, it's a mess, but to move them, we should see, are we gonna get a bond? Right?
Awesome.
Because if we're not gonna get the bond, then maybe this board wants to say, okay, well, then let's think of what we want to do with Vita. Since we're not gonna get the money to fix it. And we already know that there's issues with the size of Rancho Minerva and other things that we're gonna have to do. So there's still a whole lot of ifs for Rancho Minerva for me. So I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Trustee Kelly, want to speak to that?
Well, thanks, trustee Smithfield. I hadn't considered that possibility, and it's interesting to think about. And I do agree, we don't seem to have the same urgency on closing the site. On the other hand, I think it's more cohesive communication and maybe a little less upheaval to coordinate the consolidation of both sites, because it just makes all, as someone in public comment used the phrase rips the Band-Aid off, that we would just finish. I'm kind of torn. I'd like to listen to my other trustees and hear a little more of their thoughts before I really decide.
Steve Vargas?
Yeah, one question, comment. So if we do move forward with this timeline, are you saying that we would need a year to move Vita just to figure out the logistics and furniture and all, like the programming?
Correct. So more than likely than not, when we talk about moving schools, moving an elementary school, and I mean this very respectfully to all of our educators in this room, this is not to be divisive, this is just a matter of the complexity of moving an elementary school versus moving a middle school versus moving a high school are three very different activities.
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
I need a motion to extend the meeting.
I'm making one. Oh gosh, it's 10:30.
All right,
Go the wall. I'll make a motion to extend it
Okay.
to whatever.
Any further discussion? All in favor of voting of extending the meeting to 11:59, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or think she's 1:40 over there. Any
1:40 in the morning over here. Yeah.
All right, motion carries. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. So when we talked about what was presented to the board last time, we talked about loading standards.
Yeah.
Loading standards are the theoretical standards of how many students a school site can occupy. But now you need to take a step further in that exploration to programmatic items and what the programmatic offerings are. We haven't been attempting to communicate to the board that Vita, that can just move into Rancho Minerva without something happening. There needs to be considerations of the spaces, what's there, what programmatically would move around, how it would work. In order to do that, there would need to be not just planning time, But in order to work on it, there needs to be construction time, all sorts of other things that happen, plus considerations for furniture setups and other items.
So with that in mind, you know, assuming that we're not expanding spots at Vita or VMMS, Madison and Roosevelt can observe the 600 Vita, the 600 Rancho Minerva students between those two middle schools.
That is our understanding.
And if we were to move in that direction, then my one thing would be like, you know, double down on transportation.
Well, without that. Both levels.
But I do think, you know, if it's gonna take a year, then, you know, we should. Bond is definitely a factor. But assuming that Rancho Minerva is closed for 24, 25. You know, the election is gonna be November of 24th, so, you know, we'll know if we are able to do anything.
Yeah,
At that
no,
point,
we would know. by
So
then.
that timeline, you know, works right now, but I understand that, you know, it's definitely sooner than expected for Rancho Minerva students. For Vita, like, we'll have 2 years to plan ahead, so if a child's a sixth grader, you know, by the time they're an eighth grader, parents, you know, have time to, like, you know, plan ahead for that transition.
So I have a question. Kind of goes along with what you were saying. To close Rancho Minerva, you know, give those kids their new school and to wait on the move for Vita, which we would have to do anyway because we have to finish, so. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, makes sense.
Any further questions or discussions? I haven't. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sending kids that live on Oak over to Oceanside, whose families may have only one vehicle, and they need to use that for work, is unconscionable to me. These kids to take, if we don't get our buses squared away for this, and even in the best case scenario, you're looking at probably an hour commute each way for these kids to go to school. And then on top of that, they're gonna have some sort of, to do homework. How can they do homework on top of that? Children in a situation like this, that's putting an undue hardship on them. You know, we are taking away the last neighborhood school in Vista. And we're taking it away from kids that are going to be the hardest impacted by that. So I'm not so sure that this is even legal. I think that we're gonna be seeing, this district is gonna be seeing lawsuits from the ACLU from this, like what happened in Oceanside with Jefferson Middle School. When they did the same thing. And I just don't think that this is a practical solution, and I don't, you know, the timeline. I think the timeline is not gonna matter. I think we're gonna find ourselves in lawsuits. I really do.
So,
Can I speak to that?
okay, because I was gonna speak good to.
Well,
yeah.
first, and most of those kids don't live in warm lands. Those are $1 million homes.
Mhm.
They already get bus, they already spend an hour or 45 minutes at the bus stop. Walking, they don't live there. I would,
What about the kids on Oak? That
Well, what
aren't, they're in
about all the
apartments
kids
on
that live
Oak.
downtown?
most don't live there. Those are kids that are misplaced who live near Vista Magnet Middle School or Vita. Most don't even live there. Second, comparing this situation to the charter that tried to infiltrate Oceanside, those are apples and oranges.
The finding was that they were taking away a school that was a neighborhood school that was guaranteed for all the students in that area to go to. And replacing it with a school that had some sort of system that was a lottery or a trial system. And that was what the.
That was the charter, so
Right,
that was the
Vita.
charter coming in. Now, Vita's not a charter.
But it's the same thing. It's not, you can't just go and say, I live down the street, I want to go to Vita, you have to be put in a lot, these kids have to be put in a lottery. And that was a civil liberty violation.
So. Anyways, my perspective with this is, that most of those kids at Rancho Minerva don't even live there. We have busing. It's not optimum. I grew up in Lenox, California. It's unincorporated land right by LAX.
I know where it's at.
And Lenox High was closed down and they sent us all to Hawthorne High. While it wasn't easy, you know, I've actually walked in those shoes myself and we didn't have buses, so we would just walk from Lenox, but we have buses here and we're gonna prioritize kids that are displaced as, you know, and let's just be clear. Our magnets already displace kids. My son couldn't go to Vista, he went to Washington. Now, I'm a middle-class woman and I have resources, but they're already displaced. Kids in my neighborhood go all the way to Madison on Olive. They're already displaced, they're on the bus. We already, our magnets created this displacement with our middle school students. And they're
Which is
all
why all
dispersed
the
throughout the
kids that-
district.
Downtown are now at Rancho Minerva, was because of the MMS that displaced them all. So this will actually, I think, be a better commute for them, a better area, and like, as far as I understand, like, if only one parent can drive, but if you talk to Christine, those parents don't even drive, so they can't even get their kids to Rancho Minerva. To meet with parents, she has to go downtown to meet with the parents. They can't get to Rancho Minerva. So we have this big, huge, most of the population at Rancho Minerva that doesn't belong.
So are you saying that it's gonna be easier for those families to get to Madison or
Yes, because we
Roosevelt?
will give them transportation.
okay, but that's still, they're both still in Oceanside, but that's still quite a commute. It's in a whole different city.
But we're the same school district, so
No.
I'm not sure, I get what you're saying, but I just, first of all, I think we don't need that extra middle school. And out of all of them, that was the one that most of the kids were there because they were displaced from where they should be. And I would like to talk going further about what does that look like when they have to change from Rancho Minerva? Will they get a bump up on the lottery to get into the magnet schools that they may live near to? I know we upped that, but for this particular group, to me, that's things I would like to get into deep conversations,
That would
whether
be
at
the
a
board's
board,
purview.
at a, yeah, but, I can't with Rancho Minerva buy the whole, oh, these are our most vulnerable kids, because we have hurt and sometimes destroyed some of our kids by putting them at Rancho Minerva to begin with and taking them away. So it's not their neighborhood school. And I always had a real soft spot for those kids. Like, I actually walked in the morning with kids that had to walk because they were displaced wherever.
Yeah, then maybe we should move Vista Magnet Middle over to Rancho Minerva campus and make Vista.
Well,
Magnet Middle
actually, a
neighborhood
few
school.
years back when I was on, we had a different superintendent and I had talked with her and the principal at the time agreed with it too. Because he used to be a principal, he used to be a teacher when they were at, what was Lincoln? Washington. Lincoln. And then he told us, he said when we were at the same group of kids, when we were at Lincoln, and they would have any kind of like event, the place was packed with parents and community. They had the same events at Rancho Minerva. Nobody could show up because they were all downtown. So we took a whole lot away from that. We actually took a community, we're all about community schools now because we get it. We took these kids out of their community. And just like we did when we closed Washington for Vita, we took them out of their community. We threw them at the other school and they're still suffering. So that's things we need to fix.
So how do we fix it then?
Well, we will have that conversation. We will, we have to, and it's not just where we're putting them, it's also, we have to safety net them and the teachers say, okay, population's gonna change, needs are gonna change. And so they can support. But I would like for those things, I would like to have another workshop. I
Yeah.
can't believe I'm saying
Yeah.
that, to really talk about it, because I have questions like, so next year, we're gonna do this, we're gonna tell them going into this coming year, say if it were me, and I'm like, well, this school's closing in year. I want my child to start at the new school now. I don't want to spend this last year at Beaumont because they're just gonna go. Are we gonna let those kids, parents, put the kids into Honolulu or Foothill or anything this coming year? If they want to give them an extra year head start, or we're gonna say, no, you have to stay at Beaumont, even though we're closing it in a year. There are all things to me that we need to put on the table and talk about,
Yeah.
but not tonight.
Well, I think that we can't have those questions until we get some direction from the board about what the timeline is here. This is critical tonight, this conversation.
Right, now that I was
Once-
just trying to
yeah.
explain that.
Yeah, once this decision is made, then we can start to address those questions.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Trustee Kelly? Actually, you talked first, huh? Did you talk first on this?
I did.
Want to speak any more? to this?
Can I make, where are we with motions? I know we decided.
To talk about these things separately and then make a consolidated motion after we talk about the schools separately. I think that's.
No, it's two separate motions. Because we already voted on.
We already
both.
made a motion.
We decided
We
we
voted
voted
on
about this one
Beaumont.
before we make a motion. Sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah, we voted on Beaumont and then I don't think we have a motion on this.
Well, I asked if you guys wanted to divide the question and you all
Yes.
said no.
No, we all said yes to vote.
And we did.
So we voted on Beaumont.
And you got the yes on the one.
Yeah.
Okay,
And this one, we didn't make a motion yet because we decided to
so
talk
we
about
did
it.
divide the question.
You divided it and you were good for Beaumont.
Okay,
Now you're on to Rancho Minerva, and there has
Okay.
been no motion for Rancho Minerva at this point.
all right.
May I please make a motion to adopt the consolidation timeline that's presented for Rancho Minerva?
Second.
All right, it was moved by trustee Kelly and seconded by trustee Vargas to accept the timeline for the consolidation of Rancho Minerva. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving of accepting staff's recommendation for the timeline, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, the motion carries 4-1 with trustee Morocco voting no. At this point,
President Alvarado,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. So we did a first and second for Beaumont, but we didn't call for a full vote.
See you guys?
Thought we did.
See you guys.
A statement of consensus was made, not an
Yeah,
actual.
I was right, because you guys
Okay,
didn't want to
well,
divide the
then let's
question.
listen to the
Okay.
press from
I-
now on.
Listen to the press, I'm taking notes. All right, so we need to,
So,
Restate that.
members Smithfield motion to accept the timeline for Beaumont, member, Morocco seconded, but we just need the full vote.
No, we all voted.
No, we did not vote. Martha, can you please call the vote?
yes, all in favor of accepting the recommendations given by staff for both school sites, say aye.
For both school
Aye.
sites?
For Beaumont.
For Beaumont.
All in favor of accepting the recommendation for Beaumont Elementary, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 5-0. And then the second one,
Did the second.
Yeah, that's.
It was 4-1.
4-1. Okay, at this point, trustee Kelly is gonna say goodnight. Thank you for hanging in there from East Coast time. It's 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I have another cup of coffee.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
The next item on the agenda is 16H, which is approve the second reading of board policy 1240 volunteer assistance.
Hello. I think I have several of these.
We don't necessarily have to explain
Questions.
anything, we're just here
Yeah.
to answer your questions if you have questions. We don't have to give a report on it, but we are available.
Okay. I make a motion to approve 16H.
Second.
Okay, so moved by trustee Alvarado and seconded by trustee Morocco. Any discussion?
No,
I
it was, Soprano. Trustee Vargas.
Trustee Vargas? I don't have questions. Trustee Vargas?
Nope.
All right, all in favor of approving 16H, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is 16I, approve the second reading of board policy 1250 visitors outsiders.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any discussion, trustee Vargas? Any discussion, anyone else? All in favor of approving 16I, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is 16J, approve the second reading of board policy 1313 civility. I move that we approve 16J.
Aye.
Moved by myself, trustee Alvarado, seconded by trustee Vargas. Any further discussion?
Can I make a suggestion? Can we just bundle all these together?
Their second readings.
So that's a no?
Well, they could have been bundled in the, if it was in consolidated motion, but with their action, we do them individually.
Okay, no problem.
All right. All in favor of approving 16J, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Was there a motion this thing?
Yeah, it was me.
I move to approve 16K.
Wait a minute, let me finish, please. Civility. My mind works in compartments, as you can see by the aforementioned
Given your book.
thing, okay? Let me say, the motion carries 4-0. Thank you. That's just the way my brain works. Next on the agenda is 16K. Approve the second reading of board policy 3513.3 tobacco-free schools. Go ahead, trustee Vargas.
I move to approve 16K.
I second.
Moved by trustee Vargas and seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 16K, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is 16L, approve the second reading of board policy 3515.2 disruptions. So one of my very important job is to read it out loud so you guys know what you're voting for, especially as we get tired. So it's important to hear what you guys are voting about, and that's one of the most important jobs
Somebody
as a
giving you a hard
president.
time.
Well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but indirectly, but not really.
I was laughing at him. I wasn't laughing at you.
All right, can I get a motion to approve 16L?
You're up, Rosemary.
I'll make a motion to approve it. L.
I second.
All right, moved by trustee Smithville, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving 16L, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries 4-0. It also makes Chris's job easier.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is 16M. Approve second reading of board policy 5131.6 alcohol and other drugs.
Martha, that one's yours.
I move to approve 16M.
Second.
Moved by myself, trustee Alvarado, seconded by trustee Vargas. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 16M, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda, 16N, approve the second reading of board policy 5131.61 drug testing. Has anything? Oh, go ahead, sir.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? Has anything changed from the approval of like the changes in drug law in California with cannabis and this policy for drug testing?
Not specifically that I'm aware of, but I can look into that further for you.
I was just wondering.
This is for students.
This one's students, okay, not employees. All in favor of approving 16N? Wait, did I get a first and a
Yes,
second?
yeah.
Who was it?
was, did I say?
Soprano, Wood, and
And I
then
seconded.
Okay, sorry. Gosh, I was thinking on my question. Then I can't see. Okay, all in favor of approving 16N, say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is 16O, approve the second reading of board policy 5131 tobacco.
I think that's.
move to approve 16O.
Second, moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 16O, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. Next, 16P, approve the second reading of board policy 5131.63 steroids.
I'm gonna make a motion, because I think I can do this, to approve P, Q, R, S, T, U. Yes, and U.
Is there any,
Can I do that? I can do that, can I?
We've never done it.
we've
before.
never done it.
It doesn't mean that we can't, but I'm not aware of being able to do that. Normally, like, since we're talking about this, we could in the future, if the board chooses us to, put all this in the consolidated motion, but that's not so far what we've normally done. We've normally made them individual action items. So.
But I know that that because we can't, it's not a consent calendar, we can't do them all like, just saying, oh, we're gonna just all at once, but we can if I specify
If you
each
combine them.
individual. If I specify each individual motion, I think that could cover it. That's how we can do it.
I think that with the second reading, like, there's. Someone might say we're trying to like be sneaky about some of
Okay,
these,
if you want.
these things, but. Does someone have a second on that?
Just a recommendation as chair, one thing I seen is that by the chair, if there is no objections, I move to approve by unanimous consent, then let's knock them all out, but you have to say that.
So I would say I move to approve all of
If
these.
there are no objections, I move to approve by unanimous consent, item 16P, Q, R, S, and then go one by one. Unless there's any objections from any of the board members.
Kind of like what she did, but with all those extra words.
Okay. So.
I
I
think it was-
move to approve,
With, if there's no
if there's no objection, I move to approve
unanimously.
by unanimous consent, 16P, 16Q, 16R, 16S, 16T, 16U.
That's it.
Are there any
I
objections?
second, no objections. Do you need a second? You don't need a
No,
second.
no, you're good.
You're good?
Call it. Are there any objections?
Are there any objections to this? No. All in favor of approving items 16P through 16U by unanimous consent, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0.
Sorry if you sat there that whole night.
Okay.
She likes to hear all that information.
Yeah, we could always pull
We've
them off.
never
'Cause
done it before, but I guess if somebody wants to pull it out.
If it's a second reading, I mean,
We have first reading is all consolidated right now.
Yeah, right now it's always the first. But we can discuss.
Well, I could do that.
That would be in our governance handbook. That's something we could talk about in a governance handbook, y'all. But I'm just saying, next on the item is 17, continuation. There's nobody here to continue making public comments. So 18, board business and discussion, request for future board agenda items or other business. Yes?
I have a conflict on our October meeting. I won't be able to make that one.
Would you like to,
Is that a regularly scheduled meeting? I just have to look
It
it up.
is a regularly scheduled meeting and I will
on the
be
12th.
at a wedding in Pennsylvania and I believe the wedding is actually on a Thursday, believe it. or
okay,
not.
on a Thursday, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can do it like the old Brown Act rules. I have to get with Peter, because I think the old Brown Act teleconferencing rules apply, but no, you said you can't do it because you're gonna be dancing that night. You can't post an agenda at the dance?
I will be oblivious to all
Okay,
the people
all right.
in this world.
Okay,
Well, the question is, do we want to do it on the fifth or the nineteenth?
or we just have her.
Without her.
Yeah. I don't know, October, what do we do in October? Anything?
There's always a lot going on, but I have to look it up.
I would say because of the way we plan for the year that we just leave it be.
Okay. What's her name?
All right, is there no further 16B, any more reports or comments by anyone?
So we're moving our workshop meeting that we have for the third to the second, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
Perfect.
And it's gonna be a closed special meeting. It's not a workshop, special meeting.
Well, it could be a workshop, because we're just
But it's
titling it.
closed
as
session.
special.
Isn't it?
But right now.
Right now it's a workshop on the fourth.
Yeah, right now it's a workshop. If you want, we could just exclusively do it as a closed session, or you could do closed session and then a workshop.
Are we talking about
closed
August?
session,
Just,
just
Only
that's
closed
it,
session.
only
Okay.
closed
am
session.
I gonna get a reminder? 'Cause I
Yeah,
have to-
only closed session.
Thank
All right,
you.
so I have a reflection on the board meeting, so. Like these things, like what we did with the consolidated thing, I think those are some of the things we could talk about in governance and make tweaking and agreements to do certain things like that, but I don't know. Just if we want to talk about that at a further date, revisit the governance handbook and make it a working document that we could all abide by. That's all I have to say, so.
I have something that I feel bad I forgot to bring up. There's a petition going around to get something on the ballot that's to expand public transportation in North County. It's by 350.org. So it's, there's a half-cent sales tax that's gonna be expiring soon. And so and it was supposed to be used for transportation, but ended up getting watered down and used for something else. So this would be stronger language and would be indefinite for that half-cent sales tax increase in the county of San Diego. So I've got the petition, if anybody's interested in signing it. I'll bring it the next.
Anything else? I adjourn this meeting at